But there's no getting on till I'm ready.
Shamon. Michael Jackson. Remember him? Remember Michael?
Yeah, I remember that
Remember?
guy.
He was all famous, and then he was famous for something not so good.
He had that really popular song. What was it?
hmm
Spiller,
Yeah, filler, thriller,
filler.
pillar.
The Pillars of Filler.
And he was
It's
like
a real thriller.
with
Yeah,
the arms.
with his Egyptian dance, right? Isn't that?
I think it was a zombie dance.
Or was that kind of like a
Yeah, it was
luau
kind
type of
of
dance?
yeah. Remember that Michael Jackson song?
Yeah, that's ringing all the bells.
Yeah, I don't think I was ever that big of a fan of Michael Jackson.
No, I never was either.
Just too much before my time. I mean, obviously you hear songs so much and you just kind of assume they're good, and you're like, I guess he's great, and I should appreciate it, but it's just not that big of a deal.
I'm sure it probably is a big deal for people of that time, I guess, but
I think my favorite thing he ever did
not for me.
was the cover that the other band did of "Hey Annie, Are You Okay?"
Right, which I
What
didn't
was
know
that?
was a Michael Jackson song for the
Ant,
longest
what was
time.
that band?
Alien Ant Farm
Alien Ant Farm. Yeah, that was my favorite thing Michael Jackson did was
was he
be
created that song
Alien
so that
Ant
it could be
Farm.
covered.
Yeah, that because that's a good song. Those guys did nothing after that.
Actually, that's not true. They have a lot of
really?
really they have like I
They
used to
have
listen to Alien Ant
stuff.
Farm. They have like 5 or 6 albums, and
What?
like I've listened to a few of them, and they're all solid. Like it's
Oh yeah,
sad
it's
that
just
like
super
their most
poppy.
popular song is the cover of a Michael Jackson song when they had like a lot of really great other tracks too.
Yeah,
But I think outside of like their dedicated fan base, people just
yeah.
never
I wonder
really
if
caught
that
on.
I wonder if that has more to do with advertising and like marketing and agents than song quality. Like if it doesn't get to enough audience, it can't build that momentum of being super viral. Although a really good song seems like it would go viral anyway. So it's hard to say like if they're just niche, they just have a
Well, I
more
think
niche sound.
in this particular case, like their cover of that song it sounds considerably different than the rest of their music. So I feel like people who were fans of Michael Jackson or
That's what it
whatever,
is.
and they like that song specifically,
Yep.
and then they maybe checked out their
And
rest
they're
of their
like, I
album
don't
and were
like that.
like, oh,
This
this
isn't
isn't
what
my
I
kind of music.
expected. Yeah. I think that actually matters a lot is people go into an album or a artist and they think, I want this sound. And when an artist changes up their sound, it can ruin their entire audience or
Mhm.
their pool of audience. That's why like Ed Sheeran or something, they typically are going to just sound the same throughout their career. They might have a couple little one-off,
Mhm.
experimental things, but you can't you can't just change it up and expect to continue having the big audiences.
I think what a lot of those famous artists do is they have that same sound until like their time in the limelight kind of starts to dim.
And then maybe
And
they
then
change
that's
it.
when they choose to be a little bit more creative,
Yeah.
like have more creative freedom because they're like, well, I'm not, my popularity is diminished anyway. So now I can more freely experiment with different
Yeah.
sounds and
I'm
maybe
thinking of
capture a new audience. Like maybe if your
yeah.
change up is like really cool and suddenly put you back in the limelight or something. But
Yeah. It's yeah, because like big bands like Aerosmith or something, like they don't do anything different, but they have
no,
50-year careers and they're making tons and tons of money. But if you change it up, you might just lose all of that. Not the
I
money you just made, but new money.
Well, and what's interesting is like the perception of what's popular because so the Lane County Fair this year, Nelly
I
was
remember.
the performer, and
hmm
like Nelly was huge in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And then and in my mind I was like, oh, I mean, who the fuck listens to Nelly anymore?
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything from this guy since I was like in high school. And then we went to the night we went to the fair happened to also be the night that he was performing, and it was fucking ridiculous. Like I guess like when his tickets went on sale, they sold out in like minutes, and suddenly I was like, oh wow, like clearly he is way more popular than my perceived notion was because you just
Yeah.
don't see anybody talking about him online. I mean,
Well, you're just not in those
so
circles.
yeah,
Because yeah.
and so
Well,
I
he's
feel like
he's a
that's the
niche
case for
rapper.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, he kind of is. Like he has well, I think he's popular in this area too because he does like those country music crossovers too,
Yeah.
which is probably big for a lot of the population in this area. And but like with Aerosmith, I feel like their career was lasted so long because they just always had this dedicated following of people that, just listen to
Mhm.
everything Aerosmith does and
Yeah.
it gets them through, even though they're not having music videos on whatever fucking channel plays music videos anymore and stuff. But
Yeah. It's like Garth Brooks when he was Chris Gaines, and he went like pop instead of country,
mhm.
and it was just the like worst thing ever. And then he just went right back to the country songs.
Yeah, applaud him for trying something
Yeah,
different, I
why
guess.
not?
But
Who cares? Just fucking art
yeah,
anyway. Who gives a shit?
yeah.
It's do what you want. The guy's a billion, multi millionaire anyway. Like, what do you need more money
And
for?
he can afford to it, like if it fails, it's like, oh, I have so much money, it doesn't fucking matter. It's not like I
Yeah,
need this to succeed in order to eat
yeah.
or
Well, and
to make
a
my
lot of
mortgage.
um, music artists and stuff really don't have a ton of money off their first or second albums, and so um, I mean, they and who's good at money management anyway in America? Like we're all
No.
shitty at it anyway. So it's like nobody's like living, way beneath their means and like saving money and investing in things so that they can just not worry about their next album. They're just,
Well,
I
I don't
gotta,
think they
I gotta
even make
make more
money off
money.
album sales anymore anyway, because it's
Not
Spotify
anymore.
and shit. It's like I think it was like
There's
something like they
residual money,
literally
but
like make
yeah,
pennies off of every time somebody streams a song. So it's like the only
yeah,
way you make money off of Spotify, for example, is if literally,
like
your
everybody.
songs listened to like 6 million times in a month or something, and then
Yeah.
you'll make some money. But
Well, you
it's
have to
all
just,
touring
yeah.
and merchandise sales and stuff, selling t-shirts and shit.
I think it's mostly touring. I think that
Hmm.
live shows
Oh yeah,
is like
selling out
you're
stadiums and
gonna get
stuff.
a bigger portion of that the gate money. Um and with COVID, that fucked everybody. Like musicians are
Oh yeah.
fucked. Like so many of them.
Well, a lot
Uh,
of them started doing like online
yeah,
concerts where they would play live and you had to pay. Like some of the
yeah.
bands I enjoyed, it was like $5 or $10 to buy a ticket to watch like a live
Hmm.
stream, and you could
Yeah,
just watch them perform live from wherever they were doing it. Which
yeah,
is a cool idea. It's a way to do something instead of just sitting around waiting for COVID
yeah.
to end so you can get back to your stuff.
And a lot of them have Patreon, so like they would do it through that
Hmm.
paywall or whatever. But yeah, it's interesting because I mean we have all this excess cash, but not not me, but other
No,
people have
I don't
excess
either.
cash. And so they, you get for five, to, $100, you can go watch an event instead of going to like a movie or something. It's, those kind of live events are much more fun typically than just a movie. And without that option, it's like, you know, that whole industry takes a tank. Tanks, tanks world. You should get shorter.
Yeah, I lowered my chair a little bit because I realized I was sort of like hunched over so that
Hmm.
I was close to my microphone. And I'm like, oh, if I just lower my chair, I don't have to hunch
Oh
over
yeah, right.
anymore.
Nice. You
So
look you look tiny.
thanks.
All right.
All I've ever wanted.
What's been going on since last week?
I was actually thinking, I don't think we recorded last week.
No, we
I think
didn't.
we did or we didn't.
I think did last weekend maybe or last like
I
during the
don't
week.
remember
It's
doing
been a
it.
while.
My
Been a
fucking,
minute.
all my days just blur
I
together
mean, I can
anymore.
literally look at it.
I, for some reason,
I have
think
the
we
internet.
missed last weekend, but I could be just completely wrong. I have no idea. This is what
Um,
happens when you work like a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday job. Is every week is just the fucking same thing. It's just this blur
yeah,
until you get to the weekend, and then you get to live your life for 48 hours, and then it's just a blur again.
I posted it on July 28th. So
Yep.
yeah, it's been
Yeah,
a
we did.
week, roughly a week and a half.
Shame, shame.
That was a good episode. That was weird
Oh yeah, that was the one where we
reading.
were reading. Okay, that's right. I remember now.
Hmm.
It's all coming back to me. Let's see. I finished editing Devils in the Confessional. Not like completely, but the first round of major. So all the major rewrites are done, and then the
Hmm.
first round of editing is finished. And so now Vanessa has a copy. She's gonna edit, and then yeah, so I'm just waiting for that to get done.
Nice.
Be a little while, and then I've started piecing together my next book, which I didn't know what it was going to be, and my plan was to take a break for a while, but I already know that probably won't happen. So yeah, I'm gonna start working on that next
You
while
know what it's
working.
going to be?
Yes. I had no idea what it was going to be, and then I was sitting at work the other day, just bored out of my mind, and it just like suddenly slapped me in the face. And then I just
Oh,
went down a rabbit hole for like 3 hours of reading things, like different research and stuff
oh, nice.
about Scandinavian culture.
I have an idea.
Hmm.
What else is Scandinavian? That's fun.
Well, I've always wanted to do a story that involves like the Black Plague in some capacity.
Mm.
And then um it's gonna have like elements. You watched Valhalla Rising, right?
Oh yeah, that was
Yeah, like
cool.
I've always enjoyed that movie, like the 13th Warrior
Mm-hmm.
and some other movies that all kind of have like these similar through lines. And so I've always sort of wanted to do a story in the vein that shit like of those films and stories and stuff. And so I just never knew what that was until recently. And then it suddenly just kind of all came together. It actually is going to use some ideas that I cut out of Devils in the Confessional. Because
Oh.
originally there was going to be like a completely different plot in that
Mm-hmm.
book. And then as I was writing it, I realized that plot didn't work at all. It made no sense. And so I ended up just cutting the whole thing out. And now it's kind of, but I still want to use that idea. And now I
Mm-hmm.
have like an idea for a story where it actually works way better and makes
Yeah,
sense.
more medieval type
Hmm.
setting. Yeah, you don't
Yeah,
have any
except for I
medieval
want to.
stuff.
Yeah, I don't. Which I think is another reason why I'm excited about it. Is I
Yeah.
haven't written anything in that sort of time period, but I don't want it to be tied to any like specific culture or anything. Like I want it to be vague.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I've been reading up on like Scandinavian culture and Vikings and all that kind of stuff because it'll pull a lot of that, like those elements, but I don't want it to be like bound to that specifically, like
Yeah,
having to
not
follow that.
historical.
Yeah, like it's not going to be like a historically accurate. It's just going to use those cultural ideas and kind
Are you culturally appropriating?
of yes, of
I
course I
guess
am.
I don't think you can write. I don't think you can write fiction without doing that. Isn't that just what you're doing?
Yeah, it's hard. It's in what's tough, especially in our current social climate. Like when I've been writing westerns, I've almost kind of skirted around Native American culture in a lot of ways because you try to read about it, but there's not a lot of information about some of those culture, like some of those tribes, because it was all passed down verbally. You know, they didn't ever write anything down. So it's like, unless you're born and raised in those specific tribes, it's like a lot of that stuff you don't really know. And so instead of just making it up or assuming, you know, taking the traditional white man ideas of Native American
Hmm.
culture and using them, I tried to just sort of circumvent it a little bit out of respect
Hmm.
because I didn't want to portray them as something that they weren't. The only time
Sure.
I didn't do that was when I wrote Anathema, because I actually did study the Chinook tribes and stuff, which there was more information locally about them because they are a Pacific Northwest tribe.
Sure.
But even then, it's like I didn't do a deep dive into all their tribal beliefs and stuff. But
Well, and there
it's
were
tough when you're
tons of
writing about.
tribes.
Mm-hmm.
There are
That's
lots and
the
lots of
thing
different cultures.
is like
And
Americans have a history of just sort of lumping them all together as Indians,
yeah.
and it's like no, man,
Hmm.
like there were so many different
Yeah.
tribes, and they all had like their different things going on,
Yeah.
and so I try to write knowing that, and
Yeah.
it's tough when you're writing about cultures that you don't know anything about. Like you try to research and read as much as you can, but you're never going to get a completely accurate portrayal, I feel like, unless you're actually just a part of those cultures.
Yeah, but then you're also yeah. I mean, there's always like a cost benefit to trying to express yourself, you know.
Yeah.
Like if you're too inculcated with a culture, you can't really see it from any other perspective either. So it's like you can look at a culture from outside and probably be wrong a lot of the time when you're judging it, but
Hmm.
also when you're only the one in a culture, you just tend to be super biased toward your own culture.
Yeah.
So it's like there's no perfect middle ground of understanding anything.
Well, I think that's why especially with this upcoming project, I'll just, you know, you research those cultures, but not say that they're specifically those
Sure.
cultures. Like you just use the the ideas from those cultures to
Yeah.
sort of make your own fictional version of that.
Hmm.
That's not necessarily
Well, and
specifically that.
swords and axes and bows were used by essentially every
Yeah,
human
yeah,
culture
exactly.
for still are used.
Hmm.
So yeah.
But it's still fun to read about because we all have these general ideas about most well, I guess in America, most of our ideas for different cultures comes from movies. So it's like you watch some movies with Vikings in them, and that's you just assume that that's how Vikings were, and then when you actually read about it, you're like, oh, actually the
Hmm.
portrayals were only 50% accurate or less.
Yeah.
Because like they portray Vikings typically as these like marauding fucking heathen dirty murderous people. In reality they weren't. Like they did raid camps and things, but they were very hygienic. They
Yeah.
had a lot of respect for their women. Like the women played much bigger roles in their society than most other
More
societies.
egalitarian.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I've heard that.
it's really the Christians that did them in because Christianity slowly kind of encroached in their belief systems, and that's what split a
Yeah.
lot of the
Well, and I heard that
Scandinavian
a lot
tribes.
of Viking cultures would um, cross what is that called? Like cross marry. Like they would like
Hmm.
they were like totally cool with like, okay, let's
Yeah, they
get
pulled.
married
They
and
took
let's
brides from like
yeah, like
all over the world,
so they weren't
basically.
like so interested in keeping their culture pure like the
Mm-mm.
Christians were, and uh, uh, whatever that's called, where you like force people into your religion and culture,
Indoctrinate.
indoctrinate or proselytize is what I was looking for.
Oh, there you go.
They were just like they were just more free, I think, and less rigid about what they were
Yeah,
interested in, um, which is
their whole
cool.
like a
They
lot
were
of their
more
motto.
anarchistic, actually.
Yeah, well, their whole motto was that they accepted that their time in the world was brief,
Yeah,
and so they just lived
for the
their
day.
best
Yeah.
lives. Yeah, for the day, like
Well, it's like
fighting wasn't.
how their belief in Valhalla was
Hmm.
like based on how they lived now, but in a more like proactive way, as opposed to like the puritanical way to get to heaven is to like kind of not do much. Like
Yeah,
you're
right.
always sinning if you do anything in Christianity, so you kind of just like keep your head down, do a lot of work, and maybe you'll go to heaven. Whereas the Vikings were like live good, live hard,
Yeah,
die
like
well, and you'll get
dying well
yeah,
was a big thing.
yeah, as opposed to you know all these other ways. But yeah, it's cool. I think that's why we like Vikings, because especially in America we think of ourselves as kind of, that's why like westerns are really cool. It's kind of a similar kind of freedom and egalitarian justice and living well and being a hero and all that stuff.
Well, I think the reason why I was so fascinated with the Westerns and now this is because it's like ripe for storytelling. Because these are
Yeah.
cultures that are much more like they don't have as many laws or rules. Like
Yeah.
there's just so much more you can do. If you set like a story in contemporary times and then you have a character that's like a gunfighter or something, it's like then you have to deal with the police because
Yeah.
you can't have a character running around shooting people. And we have created all these systems of law that make that kind of stuff almost impossible to pull off anymore,
Yeah.
at least after a short time. And so it's like those cultures and those time periods are just so ripe for different stories. And there's like a sort of like a level of mysticism and during those eras too, because in the Western expansion we were encroaching on all these lands that people hadn't really explored that much. So it's like, what will people find in these places?
Mhm.
um and same with like Vikings, they were in these longboats just cruising around to these different places, and you just never knew what you were going to find back then. And we know now because we've charted the world, but they didn't. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um
Yeah. It was a probably, and also a time when storytelling was growing with the writing and printing and stuff, especially during the Western times when the printing press came out. That people could embellish on those mysteries and start
mhm.
to make stories about them, like not during that time, but like Louis L'Amour writing, however many fucking 100 books about westerns. He couldn't have done that previous to that time, because he couldn't have just prolifically written because he didn't have a
Yeah.
typewriter or whatever. um so yeah, it's interesting how myths propagate as cultures collide, and create these stories of like us versus them and monsters, kind of like the 13th Warrior was essentially about, you know, two cultures clashing,
Yeah.
and one being demonized and one being, you know, the opposite of demonized.
It's one
Whatever
of
the
my
word
favorite
is.
movies. It's so good. I
Venerated.
was, yeah. Did you
Venerated is
ever
good.
it's based off of a Michael Crichton book called Eaters of the Dead,
Oh, really?
which
I
is
thought it was
really
originally based on Beowulf.
well, so Michael Crichton,
Obviously not
there's like a
originally, but
history, I guess, there where because Michael Crichton, I think he was like a professor or something
mm,
for a while, and he it was like some conversation. I don't remember the name of the other guy, but it was this conversation they were having where the other guy was saying that he didn't want to teach Beowulf to classes anymore because he
just
thought it was
fucking
tired
boring.
and boring and it's been done to death. And then he sort of and then I guess Michael Crichton kind of struck up a bet with him that he could make Beowulf interesting again, and kind of like had this bet with this guy where he could write a version of Beowulf that like refreshed it and made it interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And so he wrote it. He wrote Eaters of the Dead, which is literally what the 13th Warrior is based off of, which
Yeah,
is
that's perfect.
following this.
It's a great movie.
Was it Arabian, or I don't remember exactly which country he
I
comes
think
from,
so.
but
Yeah,
you know,
Middle Eastern.
him in his experiences with Northmen,
Yeah.
and then them going to I love that plot in general, which is used in a lot of different stories where heroes or warriors have to go to a place to protect people from this outside threat,
Mm-hmm.
like the Seven Samurai,
Mm-hmm.
Magnificent Seven. You know, there's a lot of stories that use that specific plot line,
Mm-hmm.
which is a plot line that I used in Devils in the Confessional because I wanted it to sort of be
Oh,
a little bit of an homage to that
yeah.
specific plot. And that's basically what 13th Warrior and Beowulf is him, you know, he's a hero that goes to a village to protect it from this creature.
Yeah.
And 13th Warrior does an awesome spin on it because it bases it all in reality, right? Like they get there and they're told this like great fire serpent comes down from
Mm-hmm.
the mountain and all this stuff, and they think that it's these creatures, but really it's just these tribe of
Yeah.
troglodytes. And I don't know, it's just a really
Yeah.
cool
I think that
um
that helps with a more modern, scientifically minded audience, because
mhm.
that's kind of what science does, is it demystifies everything with reality, and that's part of that movie.
Well, and it showed like it was cool to see people from that time period and how they viewed what was happening, right? Because they didn't have science, so everything was supernatural to them that they didn't understand. So, you know, you see a giant line of people bearing torches coming down a mountain, and then you just think fire serpent because that's what it looks like to your eye,
Yeah.
and it's like all your brain can comprehend. Or how they wore like the animal skins that actually made them look like beasts, and the
Yeah.
fact that they were, you know, taking the bodies of the dead and everything. So
Yeah. It was all creepy.
yeah, I need to watch that movie again, but
I just watched
in a
it
while.
like a couple months ago.
It's one of those movies I watch like probably at least twice a year. It's just I don't
Yeah.
know what it is about. What's funny is like when you look at like the critic reviews for that movie, it didn't do that well. It wasn't very popular when it came out, but I don't know what it is. It's like one of my favorite. It's my favorite rendition of Beowulf for sure, and the book's really good too. You should check it out. It's a quick read. It's only like I don't even think it's 200 pages. It's pretty short.
Oh, the Crichton book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eaters
Maybe
of
I'll
the
check
Dead.
that out. I finished Dune. Um, what is it called? God Emperor of Dune. I wrote a review for that.
Yeah, I saw that.
And then I started that Tender is the Flesh, and we'll talk about that some other time. I'm only halfway through it roughly right now. It's a real short book. I like that. And some of the chapters are like 2 pages, and I'm like, oh, I guess I'll just have to keep reading. God damn it. I can't
Well, I'm
justify
glad that
stopping.
the story is as short as it is because it's heavy.
It's
It's like
pretty
a
heavy. It's super heavy.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's dark material to trudge through, that's for sure.
for sure. We'll talk about that when I'm done reading that. And then I did some photography. My Lightroom that I was kind of I was using somebody else's account for a while, and it went away, and I started using this free program, and it really drove home how much better Lightroom is than most other programs. And so I got Lightroom again, and I was like, oh, I'll go take some photos. Let me share a couple of them, because I was pretty proud of a couple of these photos here. I went out to Powell Butte the other day and just sort of I don't want to invite people. I want to share my screen. So
Oh, there it is.
I on my way out, I found this little guy on a tree, just like somehow. I don't know.
Well, that is
And
cool.
yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what it is. It's some type of an eagle or a falcon, and it's super cool. I've never seen this one out there before that close that I could get a good shot. And then I saw a horse and a squirrel, and I don't know what the fuck that is, little blob. And then I got this woodpecker too
Fucking
that I thought was
woodpecker.
pretty good. And that's me there with my new shirt,
You are here.
little birdie. So anyway, that's what I
That
did.
is cool. Yeah, that is an interesting looking bird. It's interesting how short and sort of hooked its beak is.
Yeah, it's little. Like normally you see the red tail falcons out there, which are really common, and
Mhm.
you see them all over the place. Or you see the American kestrels; those are all over the place out there. But this one was like hidden. Like I didn't even know it was there until it swooped down and then landed on that branch. It was trying to kill another bird, I think, or something. And I just had like 2 seconds to take a shot, and it was all dark and stuff, so I had to bring up the exposure
It
in
would have been cool had
Lightroom.
you caught an image of it murdering another
I
bird.
know it's obviously like the ideal shot of a fucking bird is it flying and killing something, and
Yeah.
like looking at your camera while it does it would be perfect. But that is hard to do. You have to just hang out for a long period of time. And I usually go on a
Or just
hike.
it's like blind luck, you just happen to
Oh, you
be
can get
fucking
just
at the right
lucky.
place at the right time and nailed the shot.
Every like that shot was just luck. Like I just lucked into finding it there. I
Mhm.
wasn't waiting for it. I didn't expect it. Most of my best shots have been luck, especially with birds, because you just don't know. And I'm not like tracking them, and I'm like, okay, they come out at this time during the day,
Mhm.
and like spending a day in a blind. Like that's how a lot of nature photographers do it. It's a huge plan, and they'll spend a week to get one shot. I don't have that kind of time and money to be
Yeah,
fucking around
exactly.
like that.
How
So I just
cool of
go
a
on
job would
hikes.
that be though, where it's like your job is to
Obviously.
just travel somewhere and then they're like, okay, you have a
Yeah.
week to, nail
Yeah.
this.
We
And
need
you
to get
just
one good shot of
your whole
the
existence is just doing that.
of a fucking rhino that nobody knows about or whatever.
It's like I always thought it'd be cool to be a travel writer, just traveling
Yeah.
around and just write about these different places that you're exploring.
Yeah. There's a lot of people doing it
Yeah.
for sure, but making money at it's probably really difficult nowadays.
You'd also have to just really strip back your life and that like you probably would just be renting some little studio apartment somewhere with a few things in it because you're probably gone all the time. So it's
Storage,
like
yeah. Yeah, there's a
um
lot of people who do the van life type stuff, and that's
mhm.
pretty much what they're doing is just travel vlogging. But you got to have a little bit of money to get going at the beginning of that, and then
Well,
you
you
got to
gotta get a
figure out a way to
following
make
too. Yeah.
money, yeah, during it. So it's still work, but you do get to travel around.
Interesting stuff.
I started watching the show The Boys. Have you ever watched that? I'm sure you
Oh, I
have.
love that show. It's
Yeah,
fucking
it's
great.
freaking great. I'm so glad I found it. And then
Um
I watched Good Omens through
Good
the
Omens is
first.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun. I love David Tennant. He's such a good actor. He makes
Mhm.
everything so good. And I read that book before, so that was fun. Um, and then season 10 of The Walking Dead is out, so I'm just enjoying hating everything about it. It's
I
so
love
much
how
fun.
you and Vanessa both like don't like that show, but you just keep watching.
I
Vanessa's
I
like, I'm
love
just
it.
so
I love
invested at this
hating it.
point
I
that she's like, I
love
just have to
hating it.
see how it ends. And I'm like, I just don't give a fuck about that show at all. Like it just makes my eyes roll in the back of my head every time it's on. I don't know what
It's
it is.
it's horrible.
I
It's
can't.
horribly melodramatic. They're idiots. It literally like at the beginning of this season 10 seasons. So that's roughly what 10 years of, well, it's actually more than that because they go through like where they just move forward in
Time
time quite a bit,
lapses.
like
Yeah.
like 5 years or whatever. Um, and they're finally like wearing armor, using shields, having spears, and doing training. Like it took them that long, like 20 years of survival to like finally do anything in the way of like strategic fucking defense. Like what you fucking idiots. How are you not like all dead? It makes no sense. They're still like running up to walkers and just trying to get them in the head and like getting into fights with them. Like what are you doing?
Yeah, you keep their teeth is like their weapon. So you always keep them at an arm's distance at
No,
least,
no, not you.
and
You keep them like way far away from you. Like you
yeah.
never get with. You would never use. You never want to be within their arm's length, right? So you would always have a spear and a sword, and then a knife, and then a gun or a bow or something. Like why would you
Yeah.
ever not have a spear or a stick to push them away? They walk no miles an hour. What are you doing? They're always like almost dying from these fucking pointless fucking zombies. It's
My
crazy.
issue with that show was that you spend most seasons with nothing happening because you could tell that the writers
They're
didn't know
just
how long the show
extending
was going
it.
to be, and
Yeah.
so they just sort of meander. Like
Yeah.
you'd usually have an
Tons of it.
exciting like first episode of the season, and then they would just meander for fucking 8 episodes, and then like the last episode or two would have exciting things again. So it's like you could almost watch the first and then last episode of every season, and you'd be fine.
Yep.
Like you'd be like, oh, okay. I can piece
Yeah.
together what happened over the last 8 hours of this fucking show because nothing happened.
It's 90% of me just feeling self-righteously smarter than everyone in the show.
Well, and I think they have to make the characters sort of dumb because that's what creates drama, right? It's people putting themselves in precarious
It's ridiculous.
positions. Like that's how you, because yeah, like after like a year, like realistically, people would have honestly a zombie apocalypse could never happen because we would all fucking know what to do, so it would just get quashed immediately.
Yeah.
But you're right. Like they would have figured out the body armor and spears thing way sooner, but for the sake of drama,
if
they
everyone's
gotta.
getting bit on the arm, you know what you
Yeah.
do? You put something around your little arm there.
You ever watch Train to Busan?
No.
You should I don't know if it's still on Netflix, but you should. It's really good. It's a South Korean zombie movie that takes place on an Amtrak style train, basically. And it follows this guy and his daughter and some other people. Anyway, the outbreak in that movie starts, right? And within half the movie, they have because they're on a train, they don't have much to use, but they literally have like big thick magazines duct taped around their forearms so that they can like push the zombies back and like they
Crazy.
can't bite. So it's like that's one of the reasons why I love that movie so much is like the characters were so smart. Like it's an intense movie, but they are actually clever in what they're trying to do with the things that they have at their disposal. You should check it out. It's a really good. It's pretty. It's maybe I think maybe 2 hours. You do have to read the subtitles though. For some people, that's a problem, but I don't think they have a dub for it. But it's a really good movie. They did a sequel too that's not as good. It's a kind of a different kind of movie, but the first one's worth watching. Train to Busan.
Yeah, I'll have to see if it's still on there. I've enjoyed having new shows to watch, so that's fun.
Yeah, The Boys is really good. Did you watch both seasons or just like?
I'm like episode 7 or so
okay.
of season 1. But it's fun. It's definitely super duper brutal. And I like that the superheroes are there's a lot of them and they kind of counterbalance each other, and they're mostly just humans. Like they kind of have a lot, like they don't just use their power to like take over the world, which it seems like they could.
Well, that starts to play a part later on, like the idea
because they're pushing on
what's
the
really holding them back. Yeah. What I like about The Boys is well, I love anything that's like will push the envelope in terms of like violence and sexuality and things like that, that we as Americans sometimes shy away from, especially sexuality kind of stuff. Like
oh yeah,
parents are cool with their kids playing an M-rated video game, but as long as there's no nudity in it. So it's like, oh, you're cool with them, blowing people up and fucking shooting them in the face, but the moment there's some boobies on screen, game over.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it when like shows will push the envelope and all that stuff in like a tasteful way. But I also liked the it's weird to say like realism in a show about superheroes, but I like how they're all like commercialized, like there's the Seven and they're this like they're basically just a commercial entity that they make shows off of, and they kind of like privatize the heroes into like hiring them off to like certain towns to work in, and then those towns pay them. I don't know. I was like, this is such a realistic depiction of probably what it would be like if superheroes existed, like they would just become these commercial entities that people would want to control
Yeah.
and then
Well, in
make
the
profits off
one
of.
of the flaws in that theory is that that's based on the superheroes wanting money.
Yeah.
But if you're a superhero, you probably could make money any way you want. And I feel like people would utilize power in ways that were very dark. Like,
Well,
I don't know
part
if
of
you
it's
would
like
accept
influence.
anything.
Like they want to be liked, you know. That's kind of
Yeah.
geez, why can't I think of his
But
name?
if you're essentially like a god, like Homelander,
Homelander, that's what
why
I
do
was
you
thinking.
care about being liked by puny humans?
Well, that's like an interesting character arc for him that they explore a lot in the second season
Yeah,
too, is he's like
I don't get.
obsessed with people loving him. Like he
Yeah.
wants to be sort of worshipped and loved
Well, and
by
he had a really
everybody.
shitty childhood and stuff, which is
Yeah.
super
And
interesting. I love the dynamics that they play off of. Um it's very um realistic
mhm.
and not it's not like overproduced, and there's I don't know, all the stories seem kind of like followable, and it's very psychologically sound, like
Well, and I
this
like
is
that
how people kind of are.
they pose an interesting question like right away, like right when that show starts, when A Train just plows through
Yeah.
Huey's girlfriend, and you're like, I always wonder when I'm watching these like Marvel movies and you're watching them destroy cities, I'm like, people are definitely dying. Like
Yeah. Why is there no
like,
consequence to
yeah,
that?
why is
Yeah.
there no consequences? What about those families? So I like that the show sort of starts with that as opposed question, like, oh, what happens when some like you have somebody who's essentially collateral damage.
Hmm.
And I like how they have like the company has to like have him sign this thing and they pay him off and like all this stuff. I don't know. It's really interesting because yeah, that's like a thing that always bothers me in these like big budget superhero movies. And sometimes they'll try to like change the setting where they'll be like, oh, that was like an abandoned part that had already been of the city that had already been evacuated or something. It's like probably not, but okay. That's what you want to say to mitigate the collateral damage that is definitely occurring all over the place.
Yeah, that's part of the annoying thing of Marvel is the lack of blood and death and stuff. Like, come on, fuck faces.
Yeah.
Because you want to make it PG-13. I was thinking that The Boys is essentially a direct, like, kind of descendant of the show The Powers from that was a PlayStation show for a while.
Yeah.
That was pretty good. It was like English, and we always steal English shows and make them better.
Yeah.
And I just were essentially it's kind of the same thing. There's lots of people with powers, and the government's in kind of trying to figure out how to manage that. And then you have people who don't have powers who are trying to like fight the people with powers. And so anyway, that's what I was thinking about was just that it's kind of just taking that and running with it in a more American kind of over the top kind of way. But that was
Have
good.
you watched the new Suicide Squad movie that came out?
No, I didn't realize it came out. I've been watching.
Yeah, it's on well, it's in theaters, or you can if you have HBO Max, you can watch it on there too.
Nice.
But it's good. We watched it. It's kind of a refreshing, sort of like The Boys, because it's like an R-rated, very over the top
Oh yeah.
kind of superhero. Like it has some familiars like superhero comic book movie tropes, but then it's pretty cool. Like there's a lot of the characters are not safe. Like it surprises me, like with some of like the characters that get killed off and stuff.
Nice.
And so it was good. It was a nice little refreshing movie.
Good to know. I'll check it out. I'm excited to go watch more movies. I watched Black Widow. Did I tell you that did I tell you?
Yeah,
about
I think
that?
so. Because you asked if I had watched it, and
Yeah.
I'll get around to it at some point, I'm sure. But
I was pleasantly surprised with that one.
Yeah, I don't know what it like. I've watched the trailers and stuff, and I think part of it is I'm just sort of burnt out on Marvel stuff, generally speaking.
Yeah.
Even though we haven't really had a lot of new Marvel movies with the pandemic and everything, but there's just so many of them every year. There's like 3 or 4 that come out every year, and I just don't. It's getting to the point where a lot of them just sort of feel the same in a way.
Yeah.
Even though they are different, I'm not saying they are all the same, but there's just like this vibe to them that you.
Well, they all have the same aesthetic.
Yeah.
And so they all kind of look like the same thing.
Like they're advertising the Shang-Chi one that comes out next month, and I'm just like, I'm sure I'll watch it at some point, but I just don't.
Yeah.
It's
we need something different.
there's nothing that like I look at where I'm like there's no reason I could pinpoint to that says like why I'm not excited. I think it's just I don't know, it's just looks like another comic book movie with a guy who has powers and fights bad guys.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why you should be excited about it. Like things shouldn't be exciting just because some big company's making it.
I'm sure it's exciting for people in Asian cultures because now they have like kind of
Yeah.
their superhero movie. You know, you don't there's not really been like a major Asian superhero.
Major Asian. That's a superhero I would get behind.
Major Asian.
You know what I watched the other day that was super funny? Speaking of major Asians, is Team America World Police got put on Netflix.
Oh man.
And I haven't watched that in so many years. And I watched it through. I was like, this is so fucking dumb. It's so fucking good. They just didn't try at all to be serious. They're like,
No.
no, this is not, these are fucking marionettes, you fucking idiots. Like we made a whole movie with like 1/4 inch model marionettes, and it's the whole thing. It's fucking so smart. It's so smart and so dumb at the same time. It makes me super happy.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's
that's like
so
South
long
Park
ago.
in a nutshell.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
so smart and so dumb. Yeah, they
yeah.
pull it off so well.
Did you see that they just signed like a deal with
I heard about that. Yeah.
Paramount's like $900 million. They're gonna do like 14 movies, another video game, and like South Park's renewed through its 30th season. It's like Jesus Christ.
How many seasons do they have? 20?
It's
They gotta
at
have 20
20
something.
I think they're at like 24, 25, something like
Oh,
that.
so they only have
So,
5 more seasons of
yeah.
that, but they
I'm
have
sure it'll
like,
keep
yeah,
getting renewed.
14 movies.
Well, I was reading
that's
that
exciting because
the
I like their
movies, yeah.
movies. I haven't seen movies from them in a while.
It'll be cool if it's like a mix of like not only South Park movies, I'm sure they're
But
gonna probably
new
have some, but
stuff.
just like original movies, kind of
Yeah.
like Team America, that
Yeah.
where they can just sort of be creative and do whatever the fuck they want.
Those
I'm
guys just
really-
never get tired. I don't know
I'm
what
really
their deal
surprised they
is.
haven't done like a movie version of the Book of Mormon with how popular the
Maybe
stage
they
play
will.
was. Like, I wonder if that'll be one of the movies. Is them like doing an adaptation of the Book of Mormon.
I don't know. I don't know who owns that particular piece of their stuff. Like I don't know
I'm-
who
they
owns all
strike
their
me as the
stuff.
kind of guys who probably own it themselves. Like they
I hope
probably
so.
don't sell it out to anybody.
Yeah, but I mean South Park's owned. I mean,
Well,
I don't
South
think
Park
they
is just big on. Well, it's actually still the #1 show on Comedy Central after
Yeah.
all these years. It's still
Yeah.
like that's why Comedy Central just keeps fucking renewing it.
yeah.
But I feel like if Comedy Central ever canceled South Park, if they really wanted to, they would either just continue it on their own or another
Mm.
network would snap that up right away. Like,
Well,
especially with all the
obviously, yeah.
streaming giants like Netflix or somebody, probably be like,
I just
"Okay."
don't know who actually owns South Park because I feel like they've been kind of locked into so many contracts. I don't know who actually owns
Yeah, I don't know.
South Park. You know, like I don't know. It'd be interesting to maybe some pieces are owned by different people, like different seasons or something.
Yeah, well, or they might license certain things off. You know, like
Yeah.
Spider-Man's licensed to Sony for movies specifically,
But not games.
Yeah.
Although,
Well, I think they might have
The
the
game
games too
actually
because the Spider-Man
done
games
by
are
them too,
PlayStation
yeah.
exclusive.
yeah, it's interesting. But I like those guys. I'd be happy to watch another
So,
movie or something.
Paramount Pictures does own South Park.
See, that's what I mean. That's why
via
they
Comedy
like
Central.
like if they want to keep South Park going, they have to be kind of the ones involved, but they also probably I don't know if they quit, maybe they'd get somebody else to do it, you know, just write it. But they couldn't do the voices. I mean, they could probably find somebody, but
Well,
whatever.
it says according to this Paramount Plus deal that 14 new original movies based on the South Park series were greenlit at Paramount Plus. So maybe they are all South Park movies, which is kind of interesting.
Well, it might be a whole series.
And then 2 of those new movies are going to be released yearly starting this year. So apparently this year there's going to be a couple South Park movies, which they
Wow.
kind of did that with this last season because instead of having like an actual season, they did these like pandemic specials
Mm.
where each one was like an hour and a
Mm.
half long, something like that.
Wow. Maybe that was like a test to see if they could do those longer versions,
Mhm.
and they're just going to do that.
Well, I
as
figured it was
movies.
either that or just the working conditions of the pandemic. They were like, well, instead of trying to hash out a full season, what if we just sort of do 2 like long episodes and then
Mhm.
that'll be the season.
That way they don't have
kind
to
of
be in
thing.
the same room as quickly
Yeah.
or as often. Interesting. How interesting.
Mr.
Lots of stuff.
Rowley.
Yeah, that's my favorite song in the world. I'm so lonely and sad, Roan. It's a great song. And they do such a good job. That guy's such a fucking idiot. Kim Jong Il. And what's funny is that movie came out way before that uh fucking
Oh, the interview, the
yeah,
one
the
where like
interview.
people were
And they
throwing
were all
shit.
like, oh gosh. But in I mean, they made Kim Jong Il look like a fucking idiot in that movie. Just an asshole idiot who sounds weirdly like a stereotypical Chinese guy.
I know.
Like not
That's like
even
the only
Korean.
accent that they can do for an Asian
Yeah,
character.
yeah. You know how fucking busy I am. You know how
That's because
fucking busy I am. He
that's
just
literally the
keeps
voice
saying
they
that.
use for
Yeah,
the
shitty
Chinese
walk
restaurant.
guy. Yeah,
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 City Walk. Why can't I
yeah.
think of his name?
I don't
And
know.
what's funny is the guy
Goddamn
who owns City Walk is
Mongrelians.
actually a white guy who has a split personality disorder where one of his
Oh
personalities
yeah.
is an Asian guy. So
That's
it's
so
even
funny.
better. Like there's like a meta
Yeah,
level
yeah.
because it's either Parker or Stone doing the voice. So it's a white guy doing the voice of a white guy who thinks he's an Asian guy. And I was like, this
Yeah.
works on so many levels. I love it.
But the Asian guy thinks he's an Asian guy. Like
Yeah.
he's not trying to
Yeah, he's not pretending.
pretend.
He
He
actually thinks he
actually
is.
it's an actual personality. There was a lady who like one day just started talking in like a British accent, and she had like gotten into an accident and then started talking in a British accent for like permanently.
Oh,
And
weird.
like she hadn't done that before, or maybe she was British and started talking in like Australian accent. It was some weird thing where they were like talking about it as like as if it was this medical thing that like you can get hit on the head and then just start talking in an accent. And I think she just was a fucking lunatic. Like why wouldn't you just what if she just like one day went nuts and started talking with a fucking crazy accent because she wanted attention and
Yeah.
then just got stuck in it, like she just forgot who
She's
she
like,
was.
now enough people know I can't stop doing this. I
It's
have
so
to
weird.
commit.
Like it's like people like um I don't know. There's just lots of things where people think that something else is going on, but it's really just like lunacy. Like it's just crazy.
I've never done this, but I've thought about doing it a couple times where you see somebody from your past that you don't want them to recognize you. And if they
Oh, and you
do,
go, oh, hey,
you want to
bro.
be like, oh, I don't remember you. I suffered like a head injury, 3 years ago and had some
I just forgot
amnesia.
all these people that I don't
Yeah,
like.
I just and there's been a couple times where
I
I
would
like that
never do
I
that. It's
think
too much
about doing
work.
it because I'm just like
Way too much work.
I would never do it for somebody that I had like a an actual relationship with, but just somebody from like high school, you're like, fuck, I don't want to talk to this guy. And then they see you and they recognize you and they're coming towards you, and you're like,
That just
okay,
doesn't happen to
I
me.
had amnesia like 5 years ago. That's what I'm gonna roll with. So I can just get out of this whole thing, hopefully.
I
I've
just
never done it, but
I know that those situations are so fleeting and superficial anyway that like no matter what you do, you're not going to see him much again anyway.
yeah.
Like I mean, it might be awkward in the moment, but it's only awkward because you know that it's meaningless. And you both know that like this is just you're just acknowledging a past that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's just
But I wish
but
more
that's why
people.
it's awkward because it seems significant because of your brain, but it's not significant at all.
This is how all those conversations, if it's somebody that you haven't seen since high school and that was like 10, 15 years ago,
Yeah.
this is how your conversation goes. Hey, how's it going? All right, cool. Well, good seeing you. And then
Yeah.
you go your separate ways. Like it doesn't need to be anything more than that. Don't fucking try to make it more than that. Just
Yeah, totally. We're not friends. It's
hey,
fine.
how's it going? Good seeing you.
And you go,
Good to see you're still alive.
I recognize you. Oh, okay, that's fine. Bye, bye.
Remember it's me from
Hey, remember how we
like
weren't fucking friends and now we
yeah.
still aren't fucking friends? That's fucking crazy, man. How we're not friends, but we know each other's faces.
Yeah, whoa.
I think it's because knowing someone's face is super duper significant, like evolutionarily. And so when you recognize a face, you automatically assume there's a reason for it, but there isn't a fucking reason. It's just because you recognize their face. It doesn't
There's
have
only
any
so many
deep
faces
level.
in the world too. Like the human face can only be made up into so many designs. I mean, let's be real.
Well, there's quite a lot though. Like
There's a lot,
really
but there
look
are
at
only
them.
so many.
But that's
There's
why you have
definitely
people
a
who look like
doppelganger of
other
you out there
people.
somewhere.
Oh yeah, like it might. I mean, I look just like my dad too. So,
Well, that's
but yeah, genetics is slowly varying. It's not like massive variation. And faces are definitely being repeated.
I've seen like 5 people who look exactly like me.
Really?
No, but
I
it
don't think
sounded
I've
cool
seen
in the
anyone that
moment.
looks like you. Yeah, I don't know. So let's get into our topic in a second, but I'm sorry, I gotta go to the bathroom.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna just let it go. Why don't
All
you
right. I'm
read
just
some of your
gonna
book or something?
vamp. Just
Or
gonna
vamp
vamp.
or
I'm
do
gonna vamp.
plugs. Plug something early.
Plugs. I'm gonna get some hair plugs.
All right.
Okay. Joe's departed. That means it's just you and I again, my friend or friends. Maybe you're listening to this in a car and there's like a whole bunch of you sitting together. Or maybe you're just alone with your headphones on. Maybe you're sitting at your computer watching this on YouTube because you've got nothing else to do with your life. And that's okay. No judgments here. Gosh, what should I talk about? It's tough. Sometimes you want to get into an exciting topic that you can basically talk with yourself, because I can't get a response from anybody right now. But how much time am I really going to have? Like, how long does it take Joseph to urinate? Also, you think he would have urinated before the show started? Because when you're going to sit down and record a podcast, you have to realize that you're about to commit 90 to 120 minutes or so of your life to this. So why not urinate beforehand? Him and I text each other before we get on to say, hey, I'm ready to record when you are. So it's not like I suddenly sprung this on him and he had no time to stop and urinate. He had plenty of time. Like, we had started planning this. It was like a little after 8 o'clock this morning, where we were both happened to be up. He sent me something regarding our topic today and I watched it, and then I was like, hey, I'm ready to go when you are. Let me eat some breakfast. So it's like, basically what I'm getting at is there's no reason why he should have to interrupt this show to go urinate, because he had plenty of opportunity to do so beforehand. And now he's back, so we can stop talking about him.
All right. I'll listen to this again. You know that. Whatever you said, it will be heard.
Good.
It's kind of nice, like wearing a sweater.
Because it's cool enough to actually do so.
Yeah, and it's like cozy.
I enjoy wearing a sweater. Lately, I've just been wearing a t-shirt, even if it's cool, because I just like feeling cold right now. I'm like,
Yeah,
this is a sensation I don't feel much right now. So let's enjoy it.
It'll like stack up your cold feelings.
And then the winter will come around. You're like, oh,
it's too cold.
Why isn't it warmer? Why? I miss being hot. Actually, I never miss being hot. I fucking hate being hot. I would way rather be cold than hot. I fuck the heat.
Oh yeah,
I fucking hate it.
I like the hot weather. I like going out in the hot weather, but there's a limit and it sucks. But the only thing I don't like about winter is like driving conditions get really shitty, and the ice and such on the roads that make me nervous when I'm driving.
Yeah,
everything else is kind of deal with a bowl.
The constant darkness kind of sucks though. It can get tired after a while.
Yeah,
because when we're in the heart of winter, like when I get up to get ready for work and stuff, it's fucking dark outside, and then like I see the sun for a little bit when I'm driving into work and when I go on breaks at work, but then by the time I get off, it's dark again.
Yeah, it's true. You just have to make the most of your days off, because there is sun on your days off. You just have to go out and do stuff on your days off to make up for it, because you got to get that sun. But I always feel like I can't complain too much, because it's so much worse in places like Seattle or Alaska. And it's like, I mean, there's still like, you just have to kind of go out of your way here. Whereas there, you literally don't have sun for more times. I mean, Portland, Eugene, I mean, there's sun during the winter. It's just not as prevalent.
Yeah.
So let's get into talking about something a little more serious than whatever we just talked about, which I don't even remember.
You'll remember when you listen to it.
Too serious. And our topic this week, you brought to my attention, is related to the responsibility of either media outlets or people regarding misinformation, fake news, lies, and the like, which is a pretty broad topic. I watched a bunch of little YouTube videos this morning to try to get my head around some thinking about it. So what do you think? What do you want to talk about?
Well, so the reason why this came to mind when you were like, oh, what should we talk about, is because gosh, well, I think it was Friday, so just a couple days ago, there was on Twitter, there was like a Fox News segment that had Rand Paul, who's one of the Republican senators, I think. Anyway, he's like on Fox News spouting this this theory that the Democrats are taking children who are infected with COVID from the border. So, like illegal immigrants, essentially from the border that have COVID, these children, and then are planting them around the United States in order to spread the COVID variants. Like, that's like a statement that he said on Fox News. And like, you hear that and you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, that's insanity. And then you're just like,
Wow.
how do people like, it's interesting that there's no repercussions for somebody who's holds a political office like that to go on to the news and then make statements like that are like obviously false. Like, and then you also, I like, I don't know, it's just, it fucking is crazy. And then you'll have people like Joe Rogan, you know, he'll be spouting off about random shit on his show sometimes, and you're like, dude, like, you got to be careful what you're saying because you have millions of people listening to you. So if you start
Hmm.
saying things that aren't true or are unfounded, then you're spreading this misinformation to millions of people who probably believe you because there's a reason why they're listening to you, I'm sure. So it's just interesting. Like, we live in an age where it's so easy for people to access so many other, like, millions of people through the internet. Um, and I, obviously fake news has been an issue since 2016. I mean, it's been an issue probably since the beginning of time, but it's so prevalent now because of how fast and easy it is for information to spread with social media and the internet in general. And so I was just thinking, I'm like, I wonder what if there should be some sort of repercussions for people when they are starting to spread things that I guess are like blatantly not true. Because there's a whole semantic argument about what's truth and what's you know, but it's like if you're spreading things that are like factually provably not true and you're essentially just lying or spreading your own crazy beliefs, it's like, should there be something like a system or something in place that stops that from happening? Like, especially when it's
Yeah.
politicians, you know, and they're spouting off a conspiracy theory about people taking children with COVID from the border and then implanting them across the United
Can
States. Like, what the fuck?
can we lock into that thing you just said? Who was that? Was that Rand Paul?
Rand Paul, yeah. Because
And
I saw somebody tweeted it. I'm like, what? And then I like watched the segment and I'm like, why is he on
so
news
how
saying this?
long ago was that tweet, do you think? Because I'm on Rand Paul's page and I'm trying to find something about it. Put unvaccinated. So I'm looking. There's one. Let me just show you his last thing, which is kind of funny. He wrote, Senator Rand Paul's official page on Twitter. He wrote, "We are at a moment of truth and at a crossroads. Whatever. We will allow these people to use. Will we allow these people to use fear and propaganda to do further harm to our society, economy, and children, or will we stand together and say, absolutely not? This is not this time. I choose freedom." So it's kind of interesting that he's like railing against other people's propaganda for the purposes of fear, while he's probably doing that himself in a whole ton of different ways. And then let me just see here. Biden COVID advisor admits what I've been saying for a year: cut up scraps of cloth undergarments, cloth masks don't stop the coronavirus from going in or out. So he's a majorly against masks and stuff like that.
I'm trying to find the video right
Yeah, if you can find
now.
it, it'd be interesting to
I'm seeing
actually
like
watch
other
it.
news articles that are talking about it.
Yeah.
Fox
And it may
News.
not be on his because it might not be flattering to him.
Yeah, probably not. Well, he got a lot of blowback from that for saying
Yeah.
that because people are like, "What the fuck? You're spreading like, you know, blatant."
Well, either it's true and it's just so outrageous that nobody will believe it, or and there's no evidence for it, which is like, what's the point? But or it's not true. I
Is
mean,
this video
I use people to spread COVID all the time. And do
right?
Republicans and Democrats agree on? Here's the honest truth. Blah blah blah. All the while, the distrust of our institutions only grows. Yeah, it's so interesting. Didn't he run for president a while back?
Rand Paul, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
He actually might have been somebody who ran against Trump in 2016. And
Where's that
obviously
music?
oh, it's this ad before this video. I'm just seeing if this is the video because the video I saw was just like it was like a minute segment from the interview where like from that specific part of it.
Hmm. Was it from recent interview? Here, put your phone up to the
This isn't the same thing.
Oh, okay.
Damn.
Fucking senators and shit. All these politicians, man. I don't know. I don't know. Just because they wear nice suits and have big words, I don't know
Well,
if
they
they.
just they say what they need to say to get into office. But
It's like
they all
a
have their own agenda.
24/7 fucking drama fest. Like all they're doing is trying to like point to drama. It's all virtue signaling. Like that's all a politician can do. Is virtue. This is my virtue. This is what I'm for. This is what I'm against. Morals, ethics, blah blah blah. Anyway, so while you're trying to find that, I was watching some.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah, okay.
They're taking kids from down at the border who may have it, and they're plucking them up and putting them all over the United States as if they're wishing to seed the country with a new variant. It's an awful thing to do. But the bottom line is for
Who's
those who
they?
are saying, I won't go to a restaurant unless we force everybody to be vaccinated. If you're vaccinated, you are overwhelmingly safe from hospitalization and death. Mind your own business. They're taking kids from down at the border who may have it, and they're plucking them up and putting them all over the United States as if they're wishing to seed the country with a new variant. It's an awful thing to do.
Well,
yeah, who's
for
the they?
one- but yeah, it's like, who are they? What evidence do you have to support that? And what kind of weird malevolent force can pluck kids up that may have it? Why wouldn't they pluck kids up that definitely have it? And then they're just going to take them from their parents and put them somewhere? What is that?
Yeah,
even?
that's
what are you
it's
talking
like,
about? And then
on
what do
so
they do
many
after that?
levels, that statement is just fucking insane. You're like,
Well,
what?
I wonder
is
if
happening?
right before then he explained more, because that's the problem too with short
Yeah.
video, is you just don't know. Maybe he went through this whole like thing about like child protective services or something, and how they end up moving kids, or maybe foster kids, you know, who may have it, and they end up moving across the country, and that ends up spreading the problem.
Well, I think
but
the idea, I mean,
don't
that's true. It could be taken out of context, but I feel like even with context, the statement is still him saying that they're taking children and then planting them around to sort of
oh yeah,
seed.
no,
So it's like,
very
how do you, I mean, even with
conspiratorial. It's just
context, like,
conspiratorial, like
yeah.
language, like that's propaganda, is just kind of saying something inflammatory without any with the main use of spreading, you know, some kind of agenda and fear. And yeah, fuck all that. That's I mean, I don't know why people would be super like, what do you do then? Like, okay, so what? People are
well, and
fucking
that's the
doing
thing
that.
is that I think a majority of people hear that statement, they're like, that guy's fucking insane, or that's
Yeah.
stupid. Why would you
But
think that?
some people don't.
But there are people who
Yeah.
genuinely listen to that, and now they're like, they're gonna go fucking talk with their friends and be like, oh my god, I heard on Fox News
Yeah.
from Rand Paul, trusted Republican source, that
Trusted Republican source.
that
Yeah.
they are
Ugh.
taking infected children and they're
Trusted
planting them around our
and
country.
politician should never be in the same term.
Yeah.
I just think that the natural position to be when it comes to information has always been skepticism.
Yeah.
And especially in a world of like where you're not right next to your community all the time, like in a world where you're like in a tribal system, you kind of, it's too costly to be skeptical. You need to be trustworthy and believe your fellow people that are in your tribe, because if they say, you know, there's a problem, you kind of need to be ready for that problem. But in today's world, where the people who are talking to you are not anywhere near you, they're not in your community, they don't know you, they don't care about you, and they're just throwing out information for attention purposes, that's something to be super skeptical about. And until some piece of information has a ton of weight to it, I don't think you should care about it almost at all. And it just takes a lot of time and research and consensus for something to have a lot of weight to it. Like, new medical things, I think that typically you still should be super skeptical until there's a lot of evidence, until there's a lot of, your trust and such should go up with the amount of evidence, and it should stay very low and until you get more and more information from more and more sources that make sense. And so it's, and because most of the time your daily life isn't affected by most of this stuff anyway, I don't know, going out of your way to act because one person says you should is just a recipe for like dysfunctional actions,
Yeah.
if that makes
Well,
sense.
there's a difference between like, see, I don't have an issue with somebody's like having a conversation, maybe in a podcast or an interview or something where they are stating skepticism, especially maybe about the vaccines or something, right? Like, still, like I feel like at this point they've proven to be fairly, they're pretty much are effective. Like they've done a bunch of studies where like 95+% of people who are vaccinated are not the ones that are currently being hospitalized for the new COVID variants and stuff. It's like 99% fucking people who didn't get vaccinated. It's pretty damning evidence that proves that the vaccines are effective. They're not 100%, but they are, fucking close. So there's like not, at this point, it seems like there's not really a reason not to get a vaccine. But I could still see people having skepticism, right, about it and maybe verbalizing that. And that isn't so much the issue as it is just making statements that are like blatantly not true, in the case of the Rand Paul thing, or like with Trump, how he kept saying that he won the election, this last election, that it was rigged against him, when it's like they conducted numerous investigations on all these voting machines and they recounted multiple times in a lot of places, and the results kept coming back the same. It's like, what you're saying is not true. Like, this is, you're literally just lying to your country right now.
Yeah.
And because you have a very dedicated following of probably almost half of fucking America, unfortunately, like, they're going to believe you because they basically worship at your feet, more so than anything else. So they're just going to believe what you say. And so it's like, it seems like what should be the responsibility to people when especially when they hold so much power and sway over people and make
isn't
Twitter
Twitter is one of the more strict ones.
Yeah.
I think it's why people go to Twitter more now than they do to other places for news, is because now Twitter is being more restrictive of that type of stuff, even with the president, with their little disclaimers and not sharing as much of certain things. So maybe that's good that Twitter takes it more seriously, and so they are censoring more of the content that's on their platform because they know that people are going there for news. It's kind of an interesting thing, though. I just think we should just, I don't know, news itself is not important. You know what I mean? Like anything is news, and news can be said by anyone. You know what I mean? So it's like interesting that like we still even use the term news as if there's some kind of like I need to get my news. But what like for what? Why? Like I think people just like it. I think it's just another piece of entertainment for the most part. So it's kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting that we want it to be valid, because we think that we need the news, but it's just lost a lot of value. The term news, the actual dissemination of what people think is a serious topic. It's interesting. I guess I'm not the best person to talk about current events and news because I don't pay attention to a lot of it. So it's a bit different because you're paying attention to it more than I am. So I'm trying to relate to this caring about things, but I don't watch the news. And so maybe I'm a minority of people who are like you kind of get what you get when you just start watching Twitter and Facebook for news. Like, you're smart enough to be pissed off when people are lying. And then there are dumb people who just they believe things and they say stuff, but they don't really matter anyway. And then so it's like, yeah, like how do you deal, like smart people just get mad when people are dumb. And it's like, but isn't that just that, like, aren't
Yeah.
you also being dumb by not expecting it? Like that's just how people are. They're dumb, they're easily manipulated, they overemphasize things that don't matter, they're superficial, they're simplistic, they don't know how research works. And so I guess I'm just like, I want people to just like kind of not give it a lot of significance, like anything, like until it really matters. I don't know. I guess it's tough because certain things do really matter. Like
Well, I was
COVID
gonna say with
matters, vaccines
the
matter.
yeah, exactly. And I think that's why
How do
it's
you deal
come
with that?
to such a head right now because
Yeah,
typically, like you said, the news, like if you look
kind
at
of
the
doesn't
like I
matter.
don't
Yeah.
really look at the world news. Like I'll maybe flip through, like see what the headlines are, see if there's any like if there's one that grabs my attention, I might read it. But generally speaking, like for example, when Trump was president, a lot of shit happened, but for the most part, my day-to-day life was not affected whatsoever. I still got up, I went to work, I just lived my life, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's like in the grand scheme, the news usually doesn't really affect us on an individual basis that much. That's why I'll read my local news more, like just to see what's going on in my actual fucking town that I live in, where that might impact me in some way.
Yeah.
But now we're facing uh, essentially another wave of this fucking pandemic that could have been hopefully, probably, maybe, can't say for certain that it would have been stamped out by now. People would have just done what they needed to do. But now we're dealing with a pandemic that does affect all of us on a day-to-day basis, some of us more severely than others, but a lot of us can't go do a lot of the things that we would normally do because this pandemic is happening. And so when you have doctors and scientists who've created a vaccine that's 95+% effective against it, including the variants, right? It's like all we need is for everybody to go that can take a vaccine that doesn't have some kind of medical condition, right? That because there are people who have medical conditions where like if they take a vaccine it makes them sick or they have a really strong adverse reaction. Those people are in the extreme minority overall. And so it's like we have a means to fight this pandemic and really get shit back on track and kind of get back to some semblance of normal. And then you just have this whole swath of people who just refuse to do it. And you're like, it's been proven. Like millions of people have had this vaccine. Nobody's turned into a fucking mutant monster. Like the Johnson and Johnson had a few people that died with blood clots, but that was like a very specific circumstance and demographic. It was like, I don't remember what it was. I know it was like women who had recently given birth or something like that. I'd have to look it up again. But
That's sad.
so they pulled, I don't think it was recently given. It was, I don't remember. But so they pulled the Johnson and Johnson one for a little while they were figuring that out, and then now it's available again. But so it's just frustrating when you're like, dude, like you guys all bitch about freedom and wanting to live your lives and do all this stuff, and then they're like, doctors have given that to us. They're like, here you go, get your vaccine, you'll be mostly immunized, and we'll be good to go. And then people just don't want to do it. And then you have people who hold positions of power that lie about it. And you're like, dude, you're literally just fighting against what we're trying to fucking get people protected against this fucking deadly virus. And
Yeah, I'm looking
and
at
a lot of it has to
percentage,
do
yeah.
a lot of it has to do with fucking religion and political groups and different tribes. And so it's almost become less about, I think, a vaccine and almost more of like a tribal thing where it's like, well, my tribe didn't create this thing and they weren't advocating for it from the get-go, so now I'm going to be extra resistant to doing it because heaven forbid, a human being exists that admits that they were fucking wrong about something, and just accepts that. But nope, we gotta fucking be bullheaded and keep resisting this thing. Everybody's bitching about how like my employer has made it required by August 31st that people have to be vaccinated or you can't work anymore. Like you'll be on leave because you're not vaccinated. And then, there's people pissed about that because they didn't want to get the vaccine. Well, we have vaccines for all kinds of, like when I first started working at where I work now, the first thing I had to do before my first day was I had to go get my blood drawn so they could see what vaccines I needed, because I had to make sure that I was up to date on my hepatitis vaccines, my tetanus, like all these different vaccines that we've fucking had for decades. And that was the first thing I had to do before I could even step foot in my office and go to work. So I had to get my blood drawn and then get updated on my vaccines. This is just another vaccine, and everybody's treating it like it's something different. And it's like, it's not. This is a fucking disease that's literally happening right now. And you're pissed because now they're making this vaccine required in order for you to work. Well, guess what? It's just the same as all the other fucking vaccines that you've had to take.
That is interesting. Can I add?
Yeah.
I'm just going to add to that. There, as far as vaccines go, the vaccines are being administered by hospitals, right? It was created by Pfizer, by Johnson & Johnson, by Moderna. These are massive, well-known, humongous, research-based medical industry, huge companies that we all would trust for almost anything in the world. And we all got vaccinated as kids. We couldn't go to school without vaccinations. Like the general term of vaccination was before COVID specifically was a no-brainer. Like just completely like you're an idiot if you're a vax denier in general. And then we have a new one come up, and it's rapidly adopted by science, roughly speaking. Obviously these companies are standing behind their product. They believe in it. And those are the same companies that give you your other vaccines, I assume. I don't know who makes like a fucking rabies fucking vaccine or I got a tetanus like 2 years ago. I was getting I think I was just doing a checkup, and I was like, give me a fucking tetanus shot, because I haven't had one in years, and I'm like, I don't want to get fucking tetanus. That shit sucks. And now obviously there's more time involved in all that, but it's still the same people, the same companies, and the same kind of scientific consensus, roughly speaking. I think the only issue is time. There's just not a lot of time. But it's not like it's coming from these random, like it's not coming from a government agency. Technically they're saying to do it, but the people who are producing the scientific product, the medical product, is the same companies that are doing other drugs and other things. And hopefully they're being as rigorous about their science as they are with anything else. And we at some point just end up trusting them anyway, because we're not fucking scientists. We don't know shit about shit. And in the process of doing science related to biology and administering to people are going to die. Just like vaccines are going to show up and kill people. As we try to combat that, our weapons to combat vaccines are biological, and they may kill people. Just like trying to learn how to like reduce the birth, like birth defects or complications from birth required experimentation throughout medical history. And that meant people died while we tried different things, in medical history. And we've gotten to the point where it's amazingly good now. So the COVID vaccine is part experiment and part really well-known government agencies working on it. And by now, millions of people are vaccinated. So the idea that you're not getting vaccinated for your own safety is not a very valid concern. I think the only real debate is just people don't want to be told what to do. And that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. They don't want to be told what to do by the government, and by mostly the government, and mostly by the side of the government they don't like. And the different factions of people utilize freedom as a political tool. Like the concept of freedom, like just being free is the tool, and saying I'm not going to do this is a way to be free, and that is a conservative value.
Yeah.
And that's their expression of that value, is to say you don't have to do this. And I think that that's true. I think it's just true that they don't have to do it.
Well,
and
I just mean like
until people physically make them do it, they don't have to, and they're using that as a way to virtue signal their freedom, because they don't have other ways to utilize that kind of virtue. And they just feel like I have to say, I have to virtue signal. Everyone just has to virtue signal, and it gets in the way of the maybe more rational concept that like who's disseminating the who's distributing the actual vaccines, what are the results of the first wave of vaccinated people, and what are the results of COVID on those people, how effective is it, and all that. And I got vaccinated, and I was never concerned that it was going to hurt me. I was only concerned that it wouldn't be very effective, and that it wouldn't, and that we would learn more about, like, maybe there's new vaccines that are going to be more effective later. But I couldn't imagine a company saying, let's put out a thing that is completely unknown and unsafe to millions of people in America.
There's so much
and just
of a
hope
liability for that company, right?
It's a
Like
huge
you would
liability.
never put a vaccine, even if the vaccine was like, oh, there's a 5% chance it's going to kill you. It's like they wouldn't have done it because that's way too many fucking people that would be dead at their hands. It's way too much of a liability. Like there's no fucking way.
Yeah.
So it's like,
and
just
that information gets out there pretty
Yeah.
quickly, and it's like it's almost kind of like you get stuck by doctors with all sorts of shit that you don't know nothing about, and you do it because you trust them.
Mhm.
And I'm okay with trusting my doctor, and okay with trusting the medical industry as a general monolith. And I'm okay with also kind of being a little loose with my, like things I put in my body, and like
Yeah.
I'm okay with a kind of some risk in my life, and I'm okay with sometimes being just part of the crowd. Like sometimes you're just part of a crowd, and you're part of a group of people, and you're just doing that because that's what other people are doing. And there are lots of other circumstances where I can exercise my freedom to abstain and freedom to not do things. Like I don't vote. And I think that's because I don't like the political system, but that
Mhm.
doesn't mean I don't like the medical industry. I like the medical industry. I like knowing that even if it costs me $1 million, I can go like have my arm amputated and live and continue living. And that's good, even though it's very expensive and potentially ruinous financially. There's like no perfect system, and we're all kind of playing improv games with our lives. And yeah, it's not the same as like, okay, now we all have to like, I mean, we all have to go to school, like that was one of the first things I learned from our freedoms as Americans, is that like, if you don't go to school as a kid and your parents don't,
Yeah, truant officer will fucking show up at your house.
your parents will get in a lot of
Yeah.
trouble if they are not sending their kids to government propaganda land, which is what a lot of people worry about with schools run by the government, is there's a lot of propaganda there. I think it's mostly just kind of low level education, but like
It's
that's
a
what I
lot of
learned when I was a
lies.
kid.
It's
like
a lot of glossing over, but
yeah, I mean, there's especially in history and
Oh, yeah,
geography
history
and
is
stuff like that,
fucking
when they
fucked.
learn about that stuff. But and their kind of complete lack of being foresight, seeing into the future of what like people really need to be educated toward, and critical thinking, and having more disruptive education. But I learned that as like in high school, that like that's the way the world is. The world is not this like this little independent utopia where you are in control of your life and you can just do whatever you want. You're part of a system, and being able to exercise your freedom to abstain from certain things is part of that system, but it's only limited to what you're allowed to do in that way anyway.
Mhm.
So it's I guess it's interesting. I think it's interesting that this went to vaccinations, because it's a huge thing in the media right now.
Well, I
There's
think
a
it's
lot
just
of
because that's where
conspiracies.
the greatest examples of people in positions of influence and power are like making blatant lie, like false statements, essentially, right? I think that's probably why it went that way, is because I mean that's the big reason why the topic came to mind for me, is just like
Yeah.
they have a lot of data now. I was a little apprehensive when they first announced the vaccinations. Like I was like, I don't really want to be like the first person lined up to get it. Like I'm interested, right? Like obviously they had to, test these things before they could put them out there.
Zoom.
And so, but I mean, I had got it mine pretty early on, actually, because where I work, they offered clinics. They were like, hey, you can sign up and just come get it. And, you know, for the sake of my loved ones, particularly my wife, who is a type 1 diabetic and has an immunodeficient disorder, I was like, you know what? I'm doing this less for myself and more for her, because I work in a health field and I have sick people that come in, and I have people coming in off the streets from who knows where. I don't know who they've been around. And so there's a decent chance that I could carry this home and give it to her. So, you know, that was like why that was the biggest reason for why I was like, you know, fuck it, I'll just do it. Like, I'll be an early adopter of it. Because I feel like the risk of it doing something to me adverse is probably far outweighed by the potential benefit of it, or the reality of just not getting vaccinated and gambling every day as these people who I've never seen before come in and interact with me, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I don't know. I just I wanted to interrupt because I'm kind of in the middle, because I have a family member who doesn't want to get vaccinated, and I actually really like that. I really like, because I know them. It's not just some random person who's like obstinate. This person that I'm talking about is intelligent and thoughtful and rational and interested in the circumstances. Has probably done as much research as I have into the situation, has different motivations for their decisions. And I kind of like that they can just say, fuck you. But I also like that because I'm in the middle, I'm putting myself there, even though I'm not, you're on the opposite side where you're like, you fucking fuckers need to be vaccinated. And I think that the motivations are just very different between the two people, between you and this other person. And this other person is almost entirely motivated by independent freedom philosophy, right? Like, I don't have to do anything just because you say so. And the jury is out. I'm agnostic about the current circumstances. I'm waiting. What I would ask them, what my question to them would be, what evidence would it take for you to accept a vaccination? Like, where is the line where you're like, okay, now I'll do it? Do more people have to be vaccinated? Does there have to be new iterations of it? Like, how many years would have to go by where you believe that it's now safe or generally beneficial, even if not as big of a deal or whatever? I would ask that of them. But on the other side, I would ask of you or people that are wanting people to get vaccinated is, what's the worst scenario if it takes longer for more people to get vaccinated? Let's say these people
I can answer
saying
that
no.
for you, actually,
yeah,
because I've seen it firsthand. So this is a big reason too why I'm a big advocate. So I know other people too. I work with people who still haven't been vaccinated, and I don't attack them. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? I'm not that kind of person. Like, we are individuals with our own fucking thoughts and motivations, and I understand that. But I do like to ask them, I'm like, oh, well, you know, like, why haven't you got vaccinated? Is it like a personal choice? Are you scared? Do you just not like needles? And so any fucking reason to avoid a needle is why. So one of the girls I work with, she hasn't been vaccinated yet. Partially, she said because of this laziness. She just hasn't taken the time to do it. And she's like, and I have a big phobia of needles. So she's like, I just haven't like wanted to go do it because of these factors. And, you know, she's not like against the vaccine. She just doesn't want to do it because it's an inconvenience and it's kind of scary for her. But now she has to, because otherwise she's not going to work at the end of the month. So now she actually scheduled her vaccine, because now she's kind of like, this outside force is pushing me to push past my own apprehensions and fears to get this done now. But I mean, I've been in the emergency. I've seen the emergency department wings where we have people on ventilators and are suffering, and their family members can't come in and see them because there's the potential that they could contract the disease and spread it. So that's a big factor for me. I've fucking seen it firsthand. These people who are suffering on ventilators, dying essentially, from COVID, and if they from COVID, because we have, I think like the last stat I saw, we had like 41 people in just one of the hospitals here in the intensive ICU on ventilators. So it's like, and I think that a lot of people who, I mean, and that I have a unique thing where I work in that health field. So like I have the opportunity to
Sure.
see these things. So I understand like not everybody's walking the halls, seeing these people fucking dying essentially, or could potentially die if they get pulled off these machines. Um, but it's like knowing that and seeing that, and I'm like the potential danger that we run into, right? If people don't continue to at least slowly get vaccinated is, if like we have a variant wave that comes through and infects all these people who are unvaccinated, those overburden the hospitals. There are some hospitals that are fighting to get oxygen right now to provide for patients that are in full emergency rooms waiting to be seen, and there's no room for them. So it's like we have a way to stop that from happening. And all it requires is people go get a free vaccine. Like they even remove, there's no cost. I can understand that being a barrier for people too. If they're like, you can go to the pharmacy, but it's gonna be like $50 for you to get your first vaccine. It's like a lot of people don't have fucking $50 that they're going to want to go spend on that, but it's free. You can go get it almost anywhere at this point. It's very readily available. There's countries that in the world right now that don't have like that have millions of people who want to get vaccinated. They just don't have the vaccines. And then we're in a very wealthy country and we fortunately have easy access to the vaccine. And we just have a lot of people who don't want to do it. And so I accept that it's a personal choice. It's just everybody, like, there's a lot, not everybody, that's false. A lot of people talk about, what is being a part of this country? What's part of being a society? What does it be called? Or like, what's the definition of being a good American? It's usually looking out for your neighbors and trying to be a productive, helpful member of society. And to me, this is just one of the ways that we can help the society and our country as a whole, is if we all just participate in getting this vaccination to fight off this fucking disease. So there's all these like patriotic people, a lot of the conservatives, are the ones that are very apprehensive. And it's like, you are also the same group of people that talk about how you would die for your country in all these different ways. And then here we are asking you to do this one simple thing that does not require your death to help everybody and your fellow countrymen and your neighbors and family members, etc. And a lot of people just don't want to do it. And I mean, everybody has their reasons, but it's like, I feel like if you just really looked at the factual data, like there is always a little bit of risk involved, right? There is maybe a small percentage of people that are going to have a strong adverse reaction to it. And in the case of the Johnson & Johnson, there are some people who died, and that, but we all take a risk the moment you step behind a fucking wheel.
I don't think you can you can't use the argument of, well, a couple people died, so I'm not going to do it, because you can't, not you, I'm saying like somebody who doesn't want to get the vaccine, who uses that as an argument. It's not a good argument because you're also not taking, like, people are dying from COVID. So it's like, you obviously don't care about deaths. You really just, I mean, you can't care about, you can't be like, oh, that's why I'm not going to do it because those 3 people died.
Also, I'm going to go eat this Big Mac. It's like we all make horrible decisions about our health. Like, so you can't. I agree. It's not a good example, because if you were concerned,
it's just not enough deaths.
Yeah, it's like, and I could understand being apprehensive. Like I said, if it was like a 5% or something, even like 1% would be fucking way too many. When you have 1 million people who got vaccinated and 1% of them died, that's what, like 10,000. And like that's 10,000 people. That's way too many fucking people. But if there's out of the millions, if like 22 people died or something, it's like that's the incredibly small percentage. Sad and tragic for the people, the family members of those 22 people. Like, I'm not taking that away. But in the grand scheme as a whole, 22 people died in the last 5 minutes from fucking anything in the world, basically. So
that's the interesting part about COVID too, is that if you look at the statistics of deaths to cases, it's I just did the quick math, which was around point whatever 2% or something like that. I think that's what a lot of people look at. Like, so there's a very big difference between looking at the overall statistical probability of dying and having direct anecdotal evidence of your own experience of watching people die. So like, if you look at like a war and you try to get the significance of that war and you just look at the deaths, like if you look at the war on terror, US deaths are very, very low. Especially compared to overseas deaths in that war on terror over the last, whatever, 15 years or 20 years, 2001,
Yeah, 20
whatever,
years.
fucking whatever. Like our deaths compared to other wars, compared to the enemy, compared to per year deaths, super duper low. And so when people start to discuss are getting out of that or are the benefits of that war or whatever, that statistic comes into play, right? And especially if you're not in the war, you're like, well, we're doing a really good job, we're getting all this freedom going on over there, we're killing terrorists left and right, and every once in a while one of our men dies. That's an argument from a detached position that I think is a important part of the conversation. It's important to become detached from big civilizational sized circumstances and look at statistics and look at stuff from a more objective kind of point of view. And you can do that with COVID. You can look at the statistics and you can look at the ages of people dying, and you can say, this is another circumstance where the older you are, the more likely you are to die from it. And the overall deaths to cases is not at a rate that is super duper concerning. That's one perspective. Now, the other perspective is, well, if you're the one in the hospitals, you're the one who has family member die, and you're the one who watches people on ventilators, you have just a totally different perspective on the actual circumstances that are occurring. And you're like, why can't we just do anything we can to lower the suffering of one? If you lower the suffering of one individual, you have succeeded in something in your life. And that's the same thing if you look at the war in overseas, the war on terror, whatever we're calling it. I don't even know where we are on that. But Afghanistan and all that stuff, I'm sure we're still doing all that. But if you're a soldier in that war or you're an officer in that war, you have a totally different perspective on it. You have a much more grounded perspective. You have a perspective that takes into account actual deaths and lives and PTSD and the effect that it has on the civilian population of those countries. Like that, just because we're killing terrorists doesn't mean we're not also killing civilians, and we're not also ruining people's lives, and we're not necessarily like injecting a ton of money and economy into those systems. So the justifications start to get very blurred for those people. And I think that's very similar to COVID, is like, some people are like, well, no one in my life has been affected.
Yeah.
The statistics are not overwhelmingly insane compared to other things like other deaths that could be worked on and prevented and things like that. Or that have come up, like the flu or like car deaths or like whatever. There's lots of things that can kill you, and there are lots of ways of throwing money at those things. And I think they're thinking, they're just not convinced by the overall picture, and they haven't had anybody die directly, and maybe that would change their emotional state, because a lot of this is emotional. Like your ability to make decisions in the world are emotional. Honestly, one of the reasons why I feel like I'm kind of more in the middle of it is because one of the reasons why I got vaccinated was almost purely selfish. I plan on taking a trip to Hawaii soon, and I knew that there was a very high probability that my life would be made much easier if I got vaccinated. And I was like, fuck it, I don't care, get vaccinated. I can't imagine it's going to hurt me. I was not scared almost at all. Maybe there's a little bit of trepidation about being poked by a needle.
Yeah, I mean, getting stabbed with a needle isn't a good time usually.
Yeah, it's not. And I had some really, really negative side effects for my second shot. I was out for the day, and then I was fine. But I also realized that, like, this is a good experiment for myself. If my vaccination genuinely is doing what people says, it means that I'm less likely to get COVID, which is super nice. I don't really think about that as much anymore. And I'm less likely to give it to other people. How nice if that's true. I'm not going to be able to prove that with my own scientific research. It's just not going to happen. I'm not going through those studies of myself, my own vector effectiveness. And so to me, it was just like, number one, selfish reasons, right? Which is a lot of why people are doing it. It's for
inherently selfish. You're protecting yourself.
You're protecting yourself, but you're also protecting someone know that's a selfish thing to help someone near you who you know would have a negative effect on you if they were affected. It's selfish in a good way, and I think certain selfish things are good, like being it seems selfless to help your loved one, but it's selfish in a certain way because you get a lot of benefit from your loved one, and there's a value system that you have to, and like kind of analyze there. So it's very interesting. But obviously, if we go back to the misinformation stuff, that's horrible. And the more information that is through like scientific agencies and through trusted people who don't have a lot of stake in it, like not politicians. Politicians should not be trusted with any new information. If they're not just reading directly from someone else's like actual trusted thing, I just don't know why I would trust any politician, but I'm like that anyway. But because they have so much to gain from the potential outcome of misinformation, they just shouldn't be trusted. But we need more, more scientific people. I watch a guy on YouTube, Dr. Mike, and he's I trust that because he says things that are caveated with, this is the stuff we don't know. This is why people are confused. This is what's going, like, he doesn't just say, do this because I say so, because I'm an authority figure. He says it with a lot of rationale and he has interviews with other people, and they talk about the lack of information regarding certain things. And that makes me trust them because they're not just talking about what they do know, they talk about what they don't know. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big part of scientific information, is being honest and objective about what we do and don't know, and how we're taking risks and we're learning as we go. And if it's all brought to people in that kind of capacity, then I think that's as responsible as you can be with information. You can sit on information forever and never get it out, which is not good. Or you can take a risk and try to give people information you think is true. But there's a total difference between people just trying to exaggerate one piece of something and use it for their own good. That's not the same thing as taking a risk with information. That's being overly confident about something that is cherry picked and for a particular end goal of you being popular or seen as brave or seen as a solution to a problem. And that should be recognized and ostracized by smart enough people to recognize it.
Yeah,
I think. But I also don't think the government should necessarily get involved and create force situations to do too much. I think that should be very, very subtle and appropriately balanced. When the government says you have to do something, it should be for very, very good reasons.
Yeah. Well, obviously. I think in the case right now it is, because we're seeing at least in terms of the pandemic, like what the Delta variant and whatever other Lambda or whatever the other one is floating around. It's like we're having a huge resurgence again, and hospitals are filling up. And now that we actually have an effective means to fight it, now the government's like, okay, like people need to start doing this now, because
they need to get more information about all that stuff out there, like real good PSAs or something, like just
and see that. And I feel like the information's out there. It's just people don't believe it. You know what I mean? Like I think a big flaw for us as a species really is that when information is presented to us that we don't like, we just don't want to believe it. We just, we just don't, because from my perspective, I look at all the scientific data and I'm like, I can't like logically fathom why people wouldn't want to get vaccinated, right? Like, what do you gain by not vaccinating yourself? I mean, the vaccine's really only designed to help protect you from this thing that's going on. And there's not really, to me, like a good reason not to do it unless you had like a medical condition, right? Where fucking vaccines fuck your shit up and maybe potentially kill you. I know that's a thing that exists. But if you're not one of those people, then it's like you don't really have anything to gain in my eyes by not doing it. All you're doing is just adding to the problem. And if you're cool with them, then, you know, like I said, I'm not going to fucking fight somebody or yell at them and tell them what they should do. It's like, well, you have all the evidence right here. If you're a smart individual and you can understand this data, and then you can also explain why what the benefit of you not doing it is, then I guess more power to you. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's why it's such a tough issue for a lot of people, because the people who want people to get vaccinated just can't understand what's to be gained by not doing it.
I think
you know?
part of it is rhetoric, because but on the side of the people trying to convince, because if you're not persuasive, you can blame the people for being dumb, but it's on, I mean, more people have to explain it in a way that is more acceptable to that team. You know, like if you're trying to persuade a person, you need good stories that make sense, like stories about people getting vaccinated and it worked, stories about people not getting vaccinated and not working. Like really good stories are really a good way to persuade. And they have to come from people that are willing to from the people that those people are willing to listen to. And the problem is, as it becomes more politicized, the politicians get so much out of entrenched positions that they get demonized for changing their positions. And they should not be looked to for any type of rational argument. It should be almost entirely scientific and entirely medical people who are just throwing so much information out, and people there should be a preponderance of evidence that no matter what you do and you look at, you should be able to look at it in a way that goes, you know, my cost of not doing it is so low and the potential benefits are so high that I'm going to do it, or I'm going to at least understand the circumstances. I'm trying to generalize this. So, but like also like with like it's kind of like a more salient version of the climate change debate, where it seems like a consensus is making a particular point. What to do about that is really vague. I mean, and very seems intractable because of our lack of control over other countries. But this is like a very acute version of that, where it seems to be an immediate thing that can have an immediate effect on things. And our ability to understand the circumstances and the situation and the effects and the long-term things and all that stuff is now. It's not like, and that's part of the problem, is that you know, if the people in power and who are political and who care about the circumstances don't just defer to the science, then the information just gets muddled and weirded out by all this fucking all this weight of the consequences of infringing on people's freedoms. I guess it's kind of interesting.
It's interesting how people will listen, but you know, they'll listen to whatever the person that they like, what their rhetoric is, when they are not even like a professional in that field, right? Like the CDC has been offering guidelines throughout this whole process, and that's what I've followed. I'm just like, these people know what they're fucking doing. These are like doctors and experts that have been in this field for fucking decades. They literally have dedicated their lives to studying viruses and different diseases and ways to combat them. Like that's their thing. Like what it was always a little puzzling to me. It's like, why would you listen to anybody else other than the people who have dedicated their lives to studying this? I'm not saying just believe everything they say 100%, but listen to them, because what they're saying is probably going to be the closest you're going to get to the truth regarding a pandemic, right? But you know, then we have a lot of people who would just listen to whatever Trump or whatever fucking political or influencer would be saying, and if it was like the opposite of what the CDC was saying, I'm just like, why would you listen to what makes you think that somebody like just Trump, for example, is the easiest example? Like, you know, why would you think that he would know more about it than
he's the president? It's a
exactly.
problem. It's a huge problem that people think the president means something.
Like,
but if Barack Obama did it, I mean, a lot of people would be like, "Oh, let's believe him." You know what I mean? Like during that time too. That's why I have a blanketed "fuck you" to politicians attitude. I don't get. To me, it's you know, battling your own bias. Your own bias is your own problem. You are the one who can battle it. And if you are are looking to get confirmation of what you believe is like, you know, like this is all being blown out of proportion, and they're taking our freedoms and they're fucking up the economy, which is absolutely true that they're fucking up the economy. Like, I think that could have been dealt with better. I think, you know what I mean? Like, I really think there's a problem. I think it's going to take years and years and years, potentially causing a complete shift in American life as we know it, as far as economy goes, with all the unemployment and all that stuff. And anyway, but which is a whole new problem. But yeah, it's so interesting that people are not on the same page, and that's, I think there's a goodness to that, and I think there's a cost to that. I think there's a goodness in general American philosophy to not have things change so rapidly that one big mistake kills everybody. And I think that there's a cost to it, which means things take longer to solve. And so that's the balance of kind of democracy that is very frustrating to people. And also it's like in short term not as effective, but in long term I think way more effective. I think the long term outcome of having checks and balances on fast actions, because of freedom, you know, the general concept of it, is that things might take longer, but hopefully have less drastic effects. And that just means that they might have more subtle, like ongoing effects, like more people will die in the next 3 years because of COVID, but our solution after that might be just more robust, as opposed to just everybody does the vaccine now and less people die now, but then there's this new situation where we really fuck up the vaccine on that one. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the cost benefit to all of this is, you know, or you can have North Korea, where if they say you're going to do something, you're going to do something. I'm not saying like that's a good alternative, but I'm saying that is an example of totalitarian systems. And when they want something to get done, it gets done now.
That's what I say. That's almost
like China.
It's an example of it
way quick
being beneficial when you live in a totalitarian thing. I would never want to live in one, but in a situation like with a pandemic, it's like, well, boom, there's a reason why they knocked that shit out immediately, because they forced everybody to do it.
The problem is if they also want everyone to be
exactly double-sided,
you know,
for sure.
You know, like unable to reproduce, they can do that right now. Like, whereas in America, if you had a bill on the floor that said, hey, we need to euthanize or create eugenics programs, it would take years and years to debate and to battle, and it probably wouldn't go through because it's against our general philosophy. But also, like, you know, China is an example of a communism where they make decisions very rapidly, and things seem to be more short-term thinking over there. Like, it's kind of like, what is the best for me and my regime right now? And their pollution levels are out of fucking control. And why do they don't have a lot of incentive to not have that keep going, because they're just in control. They're making money right now. They're worried about keeping that control right now. Whereas our politicians at least have checks and balances that make it so that they're not in control right now. And the president isn't there for more than, you know, 8 years or 4 or whatever. So it's such a power struggle for everything, you know. And the pandemic has pushed it, and our media has pushed it, and everybody's like on edge.
Well, and that's the thing, is I think that it would go a lot better if people were able just to have more conversations. Like, I don't have a problem talking to somebody who is totally against vaccines, because I'm curious to hear what their arguments are against it. You know, like, it's just, I think the waters have been so muddied by not only like the media, but then, you know, politicians and influencers who just lie or state conspiracy theories as fact, and it just makes it harder for people who are already sort of weak-minded. You know, they're just going to believe it. It's kind of like religion, you know, we just Christian leaders just state these certain things as fact about God and Jesus, and, you know, people who have a harder time thinking for themselves logically just buy it and believe it and live their lives by it. And Sorry, I just try to find a way
Yeah.
to take a
Well,
jab
people
at
like
religion anytime I can.
people like
but-
simple solutions. They like simple answers, and the COVID situation is not simple. I think that's part of the problem. Is the vaccine seems like a simple solution, but it's complicated. It actually is a complicated concept. Like the idea of vaccinations is a complicated concept to wrap your head around in general, but also the idea of it being successful after a year of research is a hard pill to swallow. And it doesn't mean that like COVID is going to go away. And that's a hard concept to swallow as well. Like, but is it effective? Is it helpful? That's what people are saying. So if more people get vaccinated, we'll find out what the ultimate effect of it is. And in the meantime, people are going to die.
Yeah.
All over the place.
Well, and the
Because of
tragic
it,
thing
because other
is
things.
is the people that die are not necessarily the people that are against making those decisions, right? Because
Well.
in the case of a pandemic, it's like it's something that you yourself could potentially be spreading to other people. I think we're kind of approaching, at least in my opinion, we're approaching this area where I don't give a fuck anymore. Because I'm like, well, if you didn't want to get vaccinated and you didn't get vaccinated and then you get sick, that's on you, right? Like the vaccine's pretty readily available. And then the people who are wanting to be vaccinated and protected have probably done it by now. So I'm at the stage where I'm like, whatever. I mean, if people are, I feel like at this point, if you don't want to be vaccinated, you probably, there's very little that they're going to be able to do to convince you other than force you to do it by saying you can't work after August 31st unless you're vaccinated.
Yeah.
Now, another wave of people are going to get vaccinated because they need to work. And you can't fight that because you work for an employer who has their own guidelines and rules. And if you want to be employed by them, then you need to follow them. And so the thing that sucks, it and still affects everybody, is that if you have all these people who are not vaccinated and they all get sick, they fill up your ERs, and then that's taking away care from people who aren't sick and are having other emergencies.
Yeah.
But now the emergency rooms are overflowed with people who were stubborn or had whatever reason for not being vaccinated. And that's the problem that a lot of ERs are facing right now with this variant wave, is that now the ERs are filling up. So now they're going to have issues when people are in car accidents or having heart attacks or these other medical conditions not related to this, and they're in emergency situations. Now the resources are spread thin because you have all these people who neglected to take the vaccine for whatever reason.
It's kind of
so it's like even when it's not related to the pandemic, it still affects everybody because there's only so many resources, medically speaking, for people to access. And so it's like even still a problem now, but like I said, I'm just at this point where I'm like, I don't even want to convince people. I still like talking to people about it because I like to hear people's reasons for not being vaccinated. And I haven't, at least personally, heard one that I feel like is a good one. And most of the time it's just people don't like it for whatever reason. They don't trust it, or they are just lazy. That's another big one. Or they're just apprehensive about getting jabbed with a needle.
And there's two different types of things that you can persuade people to do, and two kind of moral actions. There's positive moral actions and negative moral actions, as in there are things that you can say, you need to do this. Like if somebody is being hurt on the street, you need to be a good Samaritan and go save them. That's one thing, right? That's a positive obligation. And those are very difficult to convince people of, because a positive obligation means that you're willing to force somebody to do something proactively, right? Like to go save somebody's life, right? Which is kind of what we're saying about COVID. It's a positive obligation. We're saying you have to go out of your way to do something because we think it'll save someone else or you or whatever. But there's a lot of arguments about saving other people in there. Whereas a negative obligation is just, you shouldn't do something, right? Like you shouldn't kill someone. You shouldn't run somebody over with your car. You shouldn't steal. You shouldn't spit on somebody, right? Especially if you have COVID. So negative obligations are fairly easy to get people behind because all they have to do is abstain from doing something. Positive obligations are a million times harder because they force people to act. It
requires effort. Yeah.
And telling people to act, trying to get them to do something proactively and to stick themselves with needles and things like that, when they don't have to, and right until they do, is frustrating on the side of the people who want you to do something, but it's also like, who are you to tell me to do anything?
Yeah.
For sure. I really believe that like it's a very important aspect to check yourself when you try to tell people to do other stuff, because like a Good Samaritan law is not a good law, because then if I see somebody hurt on the street and I am forced to, by law, go help them, I'm putting myself at risk to do a positive obligation. And there are major consequences potentially to that action. And that's totally different from like just being like, hey, you're an asshole for not doing this. That's different than a law. Like if there's a law that's positive or negative, it changes the way that you can treat people as they do or do not do things. And if you're like, you have to go do this thing or you're in trouble, then people tend to resist that type of situation. Whereas if you just say you don't have to do this, like let's say you don't get vaccinated, now the rule is, well, now you can't go do stuff. That's a negative obligation. That's saying you can't do something because of this particular circumstance. That I think is just less of a, obviously it depends on what you're saying you can't do. That's not the same as just saying don't murder somebody, because that's, I mean, at some point you might really want to murder somebody. Like if they kill your family and the whole world is saying you're not allowed to do anything about it, like that's a tough situation too, I would imagine, for people. Like I want to go swimming, but they're like, you can't unless you get vaccinated. That's still like something you got to fucking grapple with. It's interesting.
Well, and the example that I see people floating around a lot is like, well, you have to have a license to drive a vehicle. You know, you have to like have all these other pieces of paper or identification to do other things in your life. And this is just a new one, and people just don't like it.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Because I mean, like, we mentioned it earlier, where like usually children have to have certain vaccines before they're allowed to attend public school, because we've eradicated these fucking diseases, and to keep them eradicated, we have to keep people vaccinated against them. And it's just a new one. I'm curious if we had like a what if fucking time machine thing, where like when this whole thing started, had like the political bias nature of it not been involved, how many more people would be vaccinated right now? Because I feel like it became such a politicized hot button topic where, you know, these two sides were on completely different ends of the spectrum with it. And I'm like, man, it would be interesting if there was just some way to see an alternate reality where everybody was in agreement, right? Like Republicans and Democrats were like, oh, fuck, this is a problem. We need to come together and we're going to do, like, you know, we have the same message. And
yeah, it's very interesting,
because I think that's a big part of it.
I think we should just not allow politicians to be on the media. I don't think they should be able to speak to the public. I think that until they, I don't know how to make this work because it's radical, but
it's very radical, yeah.
Like, because their job is to get elected based on their persuasive arguments. I just think that they should have like a 1 month period before their election. Everyone, it should be all positions of government, political positions should be elected, and they should be elected with a term. Everything should have term limits. And the only time they can talk to the public is the month before they're elected. And that's it. From the rest of their time is doing their job and like actually like working at something. Otherwise, fuck them. They shouldn't have a job. And then the other time they should be doing research on how to better govern and how to be better philosophers. And until other than that, politicians are just fucking blowhards, in my opinion. Like, what the fuck are they talking about? They're not experts. They have no they use experts a lot of times, which obviously that's
until
good,
they don't, but yeah,
until it doesn't fit their fucking idea.
Yeah, until it's
why should they be allowed to fucking do any of this shit?
Yeah.
Why? I mean, out of all the people who shouldn't have as many freedoms, it's politicians, because they have so much to gain from their fucking lies. You know what I mean? Like, I'm making this up as I talk right now.
No, but I
radical
agree,
concept, but like curtail their fucking speech. Just do it and see what happens. It's an experiment. I'm okay with saying it'll go horribly awry and it'll become really shitty all of a sudden. I don't know. But what the fuck are they helping? How are they a positive part of the conversation? I just don't see it.
Yeah, it's tough. I don't know. I agree with you. Politics it's a filthy game for sure. And
It's fucking
you have to take
annoying.
anything that any of them say with a grain of salt. And that's what sucks about us having a political party system, right? Because all it does is just create sides. And then people just blindly follow whatever side that they signed up for. It doesn't really matter what the person's saying as long as it's on your side. You're just going to vote for them and you're going to just agree with whatever they say for the most part. It's like we should not even have a fucking party system. It should just be a free for all. Like these are your politicians.
Yep.
Listen to what their plans are, what their ideas
Well,
are,
and
what
you got to
they
get
want to do.
get more term limits for every position and
Mhm.
less money in advertising.
Yeah.
Like they should all be equalized as far as how much they can fucking convince, like be seen, and there
Yeah.
should be more of them, and there should be more turnover.
No, I agree. And I think that was how the system was designed, right? Like it was the government was originally designed for like the everyday person to become involved, right? Like they wanted farmers.
They would become,
they wanted
they become a representative for a while, and then they leave when their little
exactly.
goal got
But what it
done.
became was now we have people who
Career
are career politicians, and
They don't
then
know nothing about.
they get
regular
all
life.
this fundraising from these places. It's like there should be a cap to that. There should be.
I'd be okay with career politicians if they were really rigorous researchers and educators and
Mhm.
and they were in the fields and they like actually like were philosophizing, but they're not. They're fucking dumb and they look smart and it's dumb.
Well,
And
they
some
have
of
a lot
them look
money
really
usually.
dumb. And their money is a huge barrier to their ability to do their job.
Mhm.
I think. Maybe I'm wrong, but you know, I don't have a lot of money, so I get to be fucking self-righteous about that.
I know. I feel like
Fine.
like fundraising and stuff shouldn't even be involved, right? Because if somebody's giving you money, then obviously you're gonna sway a little bit more towards making decisions.
Definitely
that help
not
that
from
person out.
anyone other than
Yeah.
individuals. Individuals that want to give money to anyone in the world is fine to me.
Yeah.
But corporations giving money to somebody and lobbying, fuck lobbying. How could that possibly be a good idea?
Yeah,
Well,
I don't know.
I can make a case for it. Now that I think of it, I'm being a little dramatic here, but lobbying makes sense because maybe your company is doing something that's like really important and it's being, you know, the government's shutting you down for some reason. But I also don't think the government should get involved in the economy nearly as much as they do anyway. So there shouldn't be all this collusion between government and fucking corporations anyway.
Yeah.
The government should be like protecting people from really bad stuff and like actual problems as opposed to just like, I don't know, let's fucking let this fucking thing happen because everybody's making money. I don't yeah, whatever. There's more to all that. We've been talking for a long time. We gotta wrap it up.
It has been a while, hasn't it? Jeez.
It's like 2 hours. I still gotta like do all my stuff today.
Yeah, I gotta finish my laundry and shit, but
yeah,
not much else going on today. Well, interesting topic. We delved much more into the pandemic than I was originally thinking. I think it's just because that's
a big thing now.
Where like the lies and misinformation is so prevalent right now. It's just surrounding this particular issue with pandemic and vaccines. And
constant back and forth.
That's why I don't really read the news that much anymore because it's just exhausting every day. It's like some new thing about it. And I'm like, Jesus, man.
Until there's rioting. I mean, even in Portland, like there was rioting in the streets, but it was pretty far enough away that I didn't give a fuck. Like until it's literally outside my door or like banging on my door. Like if I can just be at home and like eat my food and, you know, play my guitar. I just don't think life is benefited by worrying about everybody's problems and all this stuff going on in the world. It's just really not. It's not helpful to you as a psychological being to be bombarded by other people's drama and other people's problems and all this other stuff. Like it just doesn't help you. It does give you something to do and people need stuff to do. And I just wish they would kind of do, I don't know, do whatever. Just leave me the fuck alone. You know, like I enjoy my hobbies and I enjoy getting to do those things and you know,
I mean, it's useful for information if you're curious what's going on, you know. That's why like the local news is usually the news that I'll actually read just to see sort of what's going on. But a lot of it, you don't really need to know it. I mean, most of it's like,
most
do you need to know that somebody was arrested for a meth overdose on 10th Street? It's like, no, you don't. Why the fuck would you care?
Then you get into this huge thing about how like meth is this huge problem. We're gonna fucking do with meth, and I'm gonna go down here, and then you look at a meth head and you hate them, and it's like that. What have you done? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
Life is
well,
life
the
sucks.
reality
You
is
know,
us
life
as
fucking
individuals.
sucks. Everything sucks. You know,
Everything does.
you're not going to solve all these fucking problems, and there's no utopia. You can be killed. You know, I could be killed right now, or I could be killed. You know, walking out the door. I could be killed. You know, it sucks, and you got to be like, if I can die very quickly and I don't believe in an afterlife, then why waste time on shit that doesn't matter and that makes me nervous and stressed and doesn't help me and doesn't help me enjoy my relationships and all that. It's up to you to stop forest fires. Kind of.
Smokey the Bear.
It's also there's gonna be forest fires. Smokey,
Yeah.
you fucking liar.
The problem is that there's too many people. There's too many people on this little planet, and we need to have something happen that just takes a bunch of us out.
Yeah, life is too good.
Maybe the
and we have too
pandemic
much
is not
time
a
to
thing.
do it.
It's just going to keep mutating as it slowly fucking annihilates our
and
population.
then we'll have zombies.
I don't think it'll be that. It's just a lot of dead people.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah, it's more likely to just have less people than have people walking around who have no lungs to innervate their muscles.
When you start getting into like the scientific prospect of zombies,
It's not
possible.
It's all magic.
Yeah, it's fucking sorcery.
Yeah. But if you can turn the enemy into a zombie monster, then you don't feel bad killing them. So you just dehumanize them to the point that you're just killing a monster.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy. That's why we like zombies. They just represent our ability to dehumanize other people.
Yeah, and it's scary to think that there's like a person that would want to eat you, and enjoy it.
I don't know. I don't know if that's that scary. I think it's scary to think of somebody attacking me.
Well,
I don't really care if they eat me.
Well, zombies were originally, at least were in terms of Romero, it was all about, it was like an allegory for fucking capitalism, basically. How we all just consume over and over. That's all we do.
Yeah, and we're mindless consumers. Yeah, people definitely like to buy stuff. Speaking of which, I need to go do some shopping.
Hey,
go get some food mostly, but I might buy a hat. I don't know.
Well, before you go do that, what do you recommend people buy?
Yeah, I don't. Well, I guess you have to buy it in a certain capacity because you need Amazon to watch it. But this week, I'm going to recommend the show Good Omens on Amazon. It's a mostly British show, but there's some. I think there's some English actors in there, or some American actors. It's fun. It's based on a book by Neil Gaiman, and that book is really good. Neil Gaiman's a great writer, and it's a fun show. It's kind of Harry Potter meets Christianity, and it's a big kind of satire on Christian myths and how they're pretty silly and they're very magical. And it's just fun. It wasn't it's pretty lighthearted, which is good. I like having a mixture of dramatic shows and lighthearted shows, and I like David Tennant.
I do too. You gotta have a little levity in the drama sometimes just to help breathe.
Yeah,
but at the same time, I like things that are just overbearingly fucking depressing though too. Like I love a good just nothing good happens kind of show,
like The Road.
The Road, prime example.
Fuck, that was tough, man. I read the book and then I watched the movie afterward, and it was like, I want to kill myself.
The movie adaptation was good for that one too. Like
really
I know they cut a couple of scenes because there's a scene where like they're cooking that baby on the spit.
Oh yeah, that's
that obviously wasn't in the movie, but
Speaking of eating people.
Yeah, right. Let's see. My recommendation this week is a book titled Kill Creek by Scott Thomas. It's like a haunted house novel that follows these 4 different writers who come together at a house on Kill Creek. It's like a farmhouse in Kansas. And apparently like it's portrayed as this sort of notoriously haunted house. And this guy who runs a website, like a horror website, has these 4 famous authors come together who are all kind of struggling in their careers in different capacities. One, they all write horror novels, but they're different ones. One writes these like fetishized sexual horror novels. One writes kind of standard, maybe Stephen King style horror novels. One writes like teen Goosebumps style books. So they're like these different kind of horror authors, basically, that are all kind of struggling in their careers in different ways. And as a way to sort of put them in the limelight and get some attention, this guy who runs a horror website has them all go to this haunted house and films like an interview with the four of them. And then a bunch of weird shit happens to them while they're there. And so that's like the first part of the book. And then the second part of the book actually takes place 6 months after they leave the house, and like the after effects of their time that they spent there and how it's still affecting them in their lives. It's really good. It's a creepy book. And it's an interesting kind of examination of what a haunted house is. Like, what does that mean? What is a haunting? How does that affect different people? Like, is the house haunted or the people haunted? You know, that kind of idea. And whether even a haunted place actually exists, or if it's something that we convince ourselves is haunted, so our mind sort of plays tricks on us. So it's a really good story, and it's an interesting look at writing as well, because all the four main characters were all writers. So like I enjoyed reading it because I myself am a writer. So it's interesting to like hear the thoughts of characters who are also writers, and like how some of their ideas and thought processes are similar to your own, while also being a really cool haunted house book. It's fucking awesome, actually. And it reminded me of The Shining a little bit. There was like some
Psychological
stuff. There's definitely some like tendrils there that are similar.
Cool.
But yeah, it's really good.
Sounds good. I don't have to think about what books to read next. I just read the ones that you recommend.
It's good for like people who aren't. I think you would enjoy it because there's like a psychological level to it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's not just like this blatant like, oh, there's fucking ghosts everywhere and jump scares and stuff. Like it's a much more kind of psychological, more cerebral look at haunted house stuff. Like, I mean, there's like the traditional tropey horror stuff that does happen in the book, but it's not as prevalent. And it has like a cast of characters that I genuinely liked. Like the four main characters are all from different backgrounds, and they're all unique and interesting, and you sort of like all of them for different reasons. Like some of them are kind of assholes, but then they have this side of them that you enjoy. So yeah, it was one of the, like, a good book requires good characters, right? Like you got to have characters that you're invested in so that you care about what happens to them. And that's what this book, at least for me, excelled at, is not only like the horror element, but creating these four characters that I actually cared about what happened to them. So yeah, totally recommend it if people are looking for an interesting horror novel to read. Kill Creek, Scott Thomas. You can pick it up on Amazon and paperback, or audiobook on Audible.
Yeah. Nice. Cool. Right on. This is a interesting episode. Got a little serious. I wanted to mention real quick in the show notes on the website, I put a couple of quick YouTube videos. One is about like how, like, we all complain about the media, but it's really, we're like the ones that tell the media what we want. And so you can complain about what they put out there, but it's because you're clicking on it, you're liking it, you're sharing it, that they put it out there. And if you want the media to be different, you need to take responsibility for what you're engaging with.
Exactly.
And so that gives you a little bit more kind of accountability to the masses. So that's a video that I put out there, or that
it's true. If you're not clicking on it and reading it, they're not going to write about it anymore. So they're only paying attention to what is driving traffic.
Attention is the currency of the media and the internet in general. And then the other one is just a quick thing from the BBC about the different types of misinformation and people who spread it and why they do it and stuff like that. So those are going to be on the show notes, as well as on the website. So go to joesnotesblog.com or fleetingthoughtspodcast.com, which will just bring you back to Joe's Notes. And to check that out, as well as other episodes. And make sure to like, subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, check it out, and do all the stuff there. And what else do we have? Facebook, I suppose. And let us know what you thought of last week's podcast. We did something different with the voices and the Reading, I'd like to do that again sometime, or do something else that's kind of silly like that. I thought that was really fun.
I like it. It's I like having a show where people don't necessarily know what they're going to get every
I don't know
episode.
at all.
Yeah.
And
You don't know
hopefully-
until you start listening or you read the synopsis and you're like, "Ooh, that's interesting."
Yeah. I like doing what we want to do, and I like doing the serious stuff and getting into that as well. So
Well, this is a good one. This is a long episode, isn't it?
super fucking long. It's 220.
Oh, wow. Yeah, this is like the longest
the
one we've
longest
done
one we've
since
done.
we resurrected this show.
But it might be a little bit before we do another one, because summer's about to end. I got some plans for some weekends, so we'll
Oh yeah.
catch it on the next one. So thanks everybody, and be waiting for the new book from Channing. It's going to be coming out soon.
True. Before the year's out. I
Excited.
don't know when exactly, but
That's soon.
Yeah.
It's already almost October or September,
September.
whatever.
I knew what you meant.
It's near the end of the year. We're in the last quarter, roughly. Almost. Yeah,
Get
pretty
back.
close. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.